Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1098 of the War News stream. And today we have massive news from every single corner of the world. And first off, we're seeing an armed uprising beginning in southern Iran. Also, Ukraine launched a surprise attack on Crimea today, resulting in damage. And Taiwan seized a Chinese vessel for the first time in ages, allegedly for sabotage. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear one of the most shocking upsets for the Russian Federation in those past 48 hours that could ever be given to the Russian Federation and the current war in Ukraine. We have been able to hear that President Zelensky and the President of the United States have been able to agree to a much softer and much more evenly handed mineral deal agreement in between the two parties that will be signed this coming Friday. With the statement that came out today by the President of the United States, we were able to hear that not only will that be in form of repayment for the prior support, but will continue to assure that the United States of America will provide military support to the state of Ukraine into the indefinite future until the war in Ukraine ends on amicable terms in Western and American interests. More shocking statements were made on top of these, including the statement by the United States of America that peacekeepers will be an unconditional requirement of the United States in negotiations with the Russian Federation towards the furthering of the end of the war. This is a massive 180-degree turn from the prior statements of the office of the President of the United States that have been made so far about the Ukraine conflict. And it does appear...
It's shocking. It's like we're getting whiplash out here or something. Totally unexpected today. We don't know all the details, obviously, just yet, but it sounded like the U.S. backed off of all those crazy claims. claims that they were trying to put on Ukraine. So good sign.
We are not exactly sure what led to this. We're not exactly sure if this is a quiet change in approach or a realization of reality by the President of the United States based off of the discussions and statements made by Russian diplomats, which appears to be damning today, and we'll get into that today, or whether it was the meeting that was held just yesterday in between the President of the United States and the French President of the Republic of France, Emmanuel Macron. We're not entirely sure which one it was, or if it was a combination of the two that led the United States to realize that it would be within its best interest to support the state of Ukraine well on into the future, but the reversal from the office of the president today in actual verbal form, which we will not be showing on stream, but we do have it on Twitter, is an amazing revelation. Not only that, but we have huge news coming out from multiple other areas around the world, as at the exact same time that the Russian Federation was dealt a diplomatic death blow by the United States today, we were able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces are continuing their counterattacks within the area of Pokrovsk and Terentsk and are continuing to push the Russian Federation forces back even farther. The Russian Federation is so stretched for supplies and resources to be able to continue to fight the conflict that not only are they continuing to standard issue donkeys, but the Russian Federation has run out of the finances to be even able to standard issue these within the Russian Ministry of Defense's budget. Meaning, from this point forward, the Russian Federation's armed forces in the field will have to find a way to personally finance their own donkeys from the Ministry of Defense to continue to fight the conflict. We have also been able to hear major news outside the Ukraine war inside the area of the Western Pacific, or some people would call it East Asia, as a major shocking piece of news came out today. A significant escalation of an untold historical variety that's never been seen before in between the Republic of China and the People's Republic of China on the mainland. As of today, the Republic of China's Coast Guard has seized a Chinese-flagged and operated vessel that has severed a main cableway in between the island of Taiwan and the surrounding islands at Penghu County. The Taiwanese Coast Guard, as they are colloquially called, there we go, was actually at the scene practically immediately, requested for the ship to stop, and after the seventh request, forcibly boarded the vessel and commandeered it, and are now turning it towards Taiwanese coastlines to impound the vessel into the future. We have heard that the People's Republic of China has made no official statement at this time about the seizure of the vessel by the Republic of China's Coast Guard off the coast of Taiwan, but it does appear that this may be one of the largest diplomatic escalations ever seen so far, as a forceful seizure of a Chinese-flagged vessel by the Republic of China has not happened, from what we've been able to understand on this channel from our research, in decades. We've also been able to hear from the People's Republic of China and their foreign minister today that they will not be considering any propositions by the President of the United States to have all military spending budgets annually around the world in half. It has been made incredibly clear by the People's Republic of China that they have no wish or intention to follow through with what they claim to be such a ludicrous request. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, even more drama is happening, as we've been able to hear of an armed uprising within the Islamic Republic of Iran from the coastal city of Chabahar, directly along the coastline and border of Pakistan. We have not been able to get a large amount of news about this, but this did begin nearly 16 hours ago, and we are not entirely sure as to the progress of the armed uprising within Chabahar at this point. However, it does appear that the Islamic Republic of Iran's government is attempting to deal with the armed uprising in Chabahar, and not only that, are attempting to further fortify their nuclear research and development facilities throughout the entirety of the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the Islamic Republic is in great fear and largely in dire danger of imminent Israeli and U.S. airstrikes that may cripple the Iranian nuclear research program indefinitely and ensure that the Iranians are not able to produce and wield a weapon of mass destruction in the future, as they call it, a MEPN. But we've also been able to hear inside of southwestern Syria that the Israelis have now begun new bombing campaigns throughout the entirety of the region, and Israeli forces are continuing to advance eastwards towards the city of Damascus, as the IDF is now claiming that they will not be allowing terrorist hotbeds to pop up in the region, although we have not really seen anything to really affirm those claims yet, at least at this moment. But we have an insane amount of news. This has been one of the biggest news days, and honestly one of the most shocking news days that we've had in a while. It's so shocking and so exciting, I'm forgetting to say a letter here and there, or completely forgetting how to pronounce a word. But moving on into this news, and moving on into the largest development of the day, something that actually has to do with one of the main focal points of our world news coverage each and every single day on this channel, came from the White House, specifically the Oval Office, within the office of the President of the United States. We were able to hear today that there was a shocking change to U.S. policies on the state of Ukraine, as we were able to hear that the President of Ukraine and the President of the United States were able to find some common ground on the mineral deal that was presented to Ukraine, and the U.S. has greatly changed its negotiating stance, and not only that, the demands that have been made for Ukraine towards this agreement. As a matter of fact, it actually seems to be benefiting Ukraine wholeheartedly at this point, as the deal has now been changed to where the United States will be, U.S. companies will be allowed to enter Ukraine and financially invest in resource extraction programs within the country, but any of the profits that are made, instead of being handed over to the United States, will be put into some sort of a mutual interest fund of multiple countries that at the end of the war, once the war has been concluded, the profits from this fund will be put towards the rebuilding of the state of Ukraine, meaning that this money will actually be put towards rebuilding Ukrainian cities that have been practically devastated to the ground. And not only that, will be helping the Ukrainians to once again financially reinvest in themselves. Practically a perpetual Marshall Plan, in a sense, has been presented today. The Ukrainians seem more than happy to accept this version of the plan, as it does largely once again result in a win-win like the original proposition did many weeks ago, where the United States economically benefits from the partnership as well as Ukraine mutually, instead of one side getting all of the rewards and the other side getting none at all. Not only that, but an additional statement was made at the exact same time that did confirm that the state of Ukraine will continue on the fighting. We will not be showing the actual statement from the President of the United States. We do have it on our Twitter page, so if you do want to see it, the link is in the description below. But due to political reasons, we generally never show the President of the United States, either the current one or the former one, in actual video, of course, speaking, because that seems to always incite people to make all kinds of politicized comments. But we do have a direct quote from that video right here that Enforcer Matt was able to put so graciously onto Twitter earlier so we could actually read it. Ukraine will have enough weapons to continue fighting until the U.S. and Russia reach an agreement to settle the war. That was a direct statement today by the President of the United States and the office of the President. This is a complete reversal from other statements that have been made in the past about the mineral deal, as the mineral deal has been stated as a repayment for all prior support, and there's been absolutely no guarantees of future support to be provided to the state of Ukraine by the United States. But as of today, a direct reversal was made by the President of the United States after the Ukrainians did say that they would agree to the revised mineral deal, that they will be getting further military support from the state of Ukraine, from the United States, into the future, so that way they can continue to fight the Russian Federation and hold their own on the battlefield. We also were able to hear an additional statement from the President of the United States in this very same conference in the Oval Office today, that some form of peacekeeping troops will be needed for Ukraine in the war's end, making it incredibly clear that the United States actually has a lot more adamant forms of negotiations that will be needed to actually find any sort of amenable ground with the Russian Federation. Things that we actually have not heard in the past so far. The United States has actually made it fairly clear in the past that they really don't want any peacekeepers in Ukraine, especially not U.S. peacekeepers, and if there are peacekeepers that are going to be in Ukraine, as per the statement of the Secretary of Defense, I believe, as well as the Vice President, they would be put into Ukraine in a non-NATO mission by European forces and would not be given any Article 5 protections if they were ever to be subject to attack by the Russian Federation in the future. This now appears to also be a complete reversal of that as well, as it now appears that the United States is saying that it is a necessity that there is some form of peacekeeping force inside of Ukraine, and we are understanding that most likely will be a combined NATO peacekeeping force, including the United States, with Article 5 protections under a NATO mission. This is something that is a huge, shocking sort of a revelation, because we really do not know what has brought about such a significant change in the stance of the office of the president just within the past 48 hours. There are a couple
I can tell you my piece of speculation on that is, remember, Macron just left the White House a couple of days ago. In fact, I think it was like a day or two ago. And I think Macron might have basically told him behind closed doors, obviously not in front of the cameras, because that would not be good for diplomacy. Macron might have told him that if the U.S. leaves Europe, then France is about to take control of the European sphere. And I think the guy in charge right now really wasn't fully aware of how that was going to work. And after he heard that, he realized, maybe it's not a good idea to abandon Ukraine and Europe, because we might be left without the entirety of Europe as an alliance, because they actually have some leverage after all. You might have realized that.
Maybe so, and that was actually one of the things I was going to get into. President Macron of France just arrived and left a short while ago and spoke to the President of the United States, and we do think here on this channel that there was a certain ultimatum that was given by Macron behind closed doors that was not seen publicly during the meeting between the two. It is incredibly clear at this point in European affairs that the French have been able to largely construct themselves as the center of Europe. Once again, pretty much the Sun King, nearly like Louis XV and Louis XIV were during the times of the French monarchy. France has practically done the exact same thing, but instead of it being a royal court in Versailles, they largely house the royal court of the European Union and are able to largely guide it into its own decision making if necessary. Meaning that Europe's alignment into an American-led sphere is largely by benevolence at this point instead of by necessity. And that may have been made incredibly clear by Macron that as easily as Europe is a friend of the United States, they could easily go and become a free agent of the global sphere, trading with whoever they wish and largely representing their own interests on a global level. That may have started to create a situation where the President of the United States started to realize that all of the cards were not necessarily in the United States' hands, and that the French had been able to conduct a masterful level of statesmanship that largely forced the United States into either continuing to support Ukraine and maintain their major trade relations with the European Union, or largely the European continent as a whole, or possibly lose that, and then also a great deal of economic activity that's produced from those trades. Another thing that may have also changed that today as well is that we are starting to hear from the Russian Federation that they are once again hard line on their stances as far as the conflict so far, and it doesn't appear that they're going to be willing to make any compromises whatsoever, even to what was viewed previously by statements from the office of the president as practical appeasement to the Russian Federation. It doesn't even appear that that level of appeasement would be enough for the Russian Federation, as we were able to hear that Putin has remained committed to the war and the Kremlin rejects ceasefires without Ukraine's full capitulation, meaning that the Ukrainians have to quite literally surrender and liquidate as a country, largely letting them be occupied entirely by the Russian Federation. Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov insisted on a battlefield reality and Ukraine's ban from NATO, while Putin has framed Kyiv's territorial concessions as a compromise. It has become incredibly clear at this point that this may also be a second reason why the President of the United States has had to make a reversal on the stance in Ukraine, is that not only was Europe going to largely jump ship if the United States of America didn't continue to support Ukraine and continue to represent Western interests as a collective whole, but it also may have become incredibly clear in the background between the diplomatic envoys that the issues that were faced by the prior administration in trying to find any way to end this conflict are going to be the same issues presented to the current administration at this point in time, because it appears that the Russian Federation is still looking for not just a victory, but a total victory, an unconditional victory over the state of Ukraine at this time. Those two things combined largely forces the President of the United States, whether he wants to or not, to continue to support Ukraine in the conflict, because it's either they quite literally capitulate to the Russian Federation and give up the entire state of Ukraine, or, and also at the exact same time, lose Europe, or they continue to support Ukraine, continue to see the major trade relations that exist in between Europe and the United States continue to exist into the future, and not only that, the Russian Federation still remains hardline on its stance, and there's absolutely no diplomatic grounds to be made in that perspective. But it does sound as though a lot of people are saying that Ukraine will be able to fight on, or the president largely said that today, after the minerals agreement is to be signed this Friday by Zelensky, who will be taking a trip to the United States here coming up this Friday. Of course, he'll be on his way here, most likely on Wednesday and Thursday. But a lot of people are saying that this sounds like a great change. And nearly 43% of everyone saying that. 31% are saying that sounds very temporary and flimsy due to the almost flip-flop kind of a stance that the President of the United States has made on the state of Ukraine. We saw that initially, when he took office about a month ago, that the stance was largely positive towards Ukraine, and then flipped to be entirely negative, and then as of today, it's going back to being positive, and there were generally good statements being made about the state of Ukraine again. Some people are believing that because of that, this could easily reverse back in the other direction as quickly as it got into this current direction right now. And others are saying that it will be good enough, at least for now, and some are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So after the complete whiplash, the 180 today by the United States, really blowing me away after hearing this today. It looks like 43% said, yes, it sounds like a great change that the U.S. is starting to take a good relations with Ukraine once again, while 31% said, no, it sounds very flimsy and temporary, and 15% said, it'll be good enough for now, at least temporarily. And I'll say this, if you're hesitant to believe this, I can understand where you're coming from, because it seems like we're getting like the bipolar treatment here. One day it's one thing, the next day it's a different thing. So it seems to be flip-flopping quite a bit. But I think something might have happened in the background to cause the U.S. president to change his mind that could cause him to keep it that way from this point forward. Either Macron said something behind closed doors to tell the president that he's about to lose control over Europe if he continues down this path, or maybe Putin has basically deteriorated negotiations behind closed doors to the point where the U.S. president knows there's no hope in hell of a treaty being reached whatsoever. So it's one of those things, or either, the guy's just bipolar as hell and he doesn't know what he's doing, one or the other. But I would say it sounds like a great change, but I'm a little bit hesitant to believe it's going to be a solid thing, even though I'm leaning that direction. So I'm with the 43%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm going to have to be with the 43%. I do understand, and I've been seeing this in the chat while I've been explaining this, that a lot of people are very reluctant and skeptical to believe really anything that the President of the United States is saying at this point. And I largely do understand that, and I'll have to be entirely honest with y'all, that would be a very logical sort of an assessment, that the President of the United States can say one thing today, another tomorrow, and sometimes says things that are entirely untrue. That's something that's happened just in our sphere alone over the past few days. For example, with Macron, the President of the United States stated, while Macron was present, that the French gave all of their support to Ukraine in the form of a loan, and they were wanting to be repaid with interest, and the president of France had to correct him on the spot that was not the case, and then the president of the United States continued to insist that, he'll say whatever he wants, he probably doesn't know, and then the president of France then retorted that he's the president of France and he knows what he did, considering that he was the one who to approve the funding. Regardless of that, the statements that were made today are being made about the mineral deal and what we're understanding that Ukraine is going to be getting into the future. And this is something that's starting to become less so of hearsay and the more so the trap of the gab more than the gift of the gab, but more so beyond that. It's moving on into something that actually will be written in stone. And I know that a lot of people still have a good amount of apprehension about the President of the United States, and considering the flip-flop of the stance on Ukraine 3 times at this point, that is still fairly reasonable. I get where a lot of people are coming from with that. If a deal is actually written and stricken under amenable terms, mind you, I believe that this will be fairly beneficial. I do want to put this out there as well, that the United States of America isn't really exercising, at least from what we've heard today, the type of duress that was being put on Ukraine previously. And I know that many people, the last time we were here on air, y'all were hearing about the massive duress that the United States was attempting to put Ukraine under by threatening to withdraw all support, and also Starlink to pretty much force them into signing the deal. It appears, like we're saying, that something has happened in the background that largely would make that pointless to do, and so they've had to back off of all of that and largely do a reversal. And once again, I largely am leaning towards, if anyone is going to be the hero of the hour, it's most likely going to be Macron, because this is all happening right after Macron left and returned back to Paris after his visit with the President of the United States in Washington, D.C. I believe that Macron made it incredibly clear that if the United States believes that they are always going to hold all of the power and be able to, pretty much beat everyone with a stick that's in the Western sphere, that's not going to be happening anymore, because Europe has its ability to wander off and conduct its business however it wants to without it being a part of a U.S.-led sphere. And I think that's actually...
Enforcer, I think a lot of people actually underestimate how much power France actually holds over Europe, because that's something we discuss this like off stream, by the way. Like, we don't just have discussions on the air about this topic. We discuss it with people occasionally in real life as well. And a lot of people fail to realize that France is the leader of the European sphere, basically in theory and also in practice as well. And they're gaining more power by the day as they try to consolidate that power if the U.S. decides to leave the continent of Europe. So they hold the cards in Europe. So if the U.S. decides to basically take their cards and cash out, then France is going to come in and take those right over pretty instantly, in my opinion. And a lot of people think that France is just another European country, but that's not really true. France is much more powerful than that. They're not obviously as powerful as the United States, but for Europe, they are essentially one of the big players there, probably the biggest when it comes to diplomacy.
When you look at the European Union, the best way to look at it for many people, I don't know if a lot of people are going to get this one because this is a very old kind of a analogy, but it almost exists and operates these days a lot like the Holy Roman Empire, which existed in a pretty large area of pretty much Western Europe, if you want to call it Central Europe more so, spanning all the way down to Italy, throughout most of Germany, including the Czech Republic, Austria, and so on. But back during that time, and much like how the European Union works today, the European Union is a lot like a confederation made up of different princely houses. And those princely houses in the modern day are the democratically elected governments of all of these different nations, who then select, the leaders of these countries, select their representatives to go to the European Union Parliament, almost like the Holy Roman Empire Diet, to represent the interests of these different lords. However, the thing is that much like the Holy Roman Empire, pretty much everyone comes together in the end, in an unofficial way in the modern day, to with their electors to select an emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, which is pretty much what everyone's done at this point with the French in the European Union. The French largely hold the crown at this point as a country, as the emperor of the modern Holy Roman Empire, or the emperor of the European Union, and gets to guide their decision-making processes because they have enough sway or largely trust held throughout the entirety of Europe, including the United Kingdom, to pretty much be able to sway Europe one direction or the other. They're economically significant, they're militarily independent from everyone surrounding them. They largely are the country that a lot of people in Europe look to largely lead their miniature sphere at this point, if anyone wants to look at it that way. And not only that, the French are nuclear armed, the most nuclear armed country in Europe, actually beating out Britain by about a couple of dozen nuclear warheads. So with that in mind, France holds a significant amount of power, and it's not just the power that the French economy has, which is small in comparison to the United States on its own. Europe as a whole is largely a part of the European Union. And the European Union, also including the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which really isn't a part of the European Union, but may as well be a part of Europe as far as an economic bulk, has a gross domestic product of $21 trillion annually, meaning that the European Union, including the UK, which it technically is not a member, as an entity on the world stage, is the second most powerful economic entity outside of the United States of America, actually beating China by about $5 trillion US in GDP figures annually. So with that in mind, this is a very important sphere, and Macron holds a lot of power, whether people want to admit that or not. He's practically the emperor of a modern Holy Roman Empire, so he actually has a great deal of power over what Europe might do in the future. And I believe that he arrived to the United States and made that fairly clear over the past few days to the President of the United States that, much like the Europeans have beneficial trade relations with the United States, they could unilaterally ensure that they cease to exist. And this is a position that would leave Europe in an actually fairly beneficial spot. To explain this to many, is that if the Europeans create their own sphere, the United States doesn't have the unmitigated benefit of being Europe's #1 trading partner and getting all of the importation benefits that comes with that, while largely stymieing any other kind of trade, for example with China. Europe at that point would be able to create their own trade agreements and their own military alliances to ensure their own security, meaning that at that point, Europe would be the dead center of the economic world, and China and the United States would actually have to be battling for market share in the European market, instead of the United States being able to pretty much have deference in every single aspect of the European market as far as importations and exports are concerned. This means that that kind of leverage is huge, and unless if the United States wants to see a massive loss of economic growth annually, considering that European trade totals about $1 trillion per year in imports and exports, the President of the United States has to tread a little bit more carefully, because otherwise the French could pull the rug out from under the United States, and that wouldn't really turn out too good. And on top of that, it already appears that the Russian Federation is not at all looking to actually end the war. We're now seeing that Lavrov once again today is coming out and pretty much declaring that they want a full capitulation in Ukraine, and considering that that's something that the United States isn't even really looking for either, even with us saying that the prior terms were complete appeasement, it didn't even come close to that. The United States pretty much has its hands tied. The Russians are an immovable object, and the Europeans are an unstoppable force. So with the two combined, the United States pretty much has to force itself into trying to back off of its prior assessment of Ukraine because it's not going to work in any direction. It's a complete loss if we continue to move on the Ukrainian direction the same way that we have been on the diplomatic sphere. So
Honestly, you know what would have been legendary if Macron, when he came over to the United States, if he brought like a croissant with him and gave it to the president. And, what's this, Macron? It's a croissant, Mr. President. Enjoy. And then tell him that'd be the last one you get if you pull out of Europe. It's like, that would have been like the boss move. Bring over the croissant and literally hand it to him and tell him that's going to be the last one you get if you pull out of Europe because the trade's going to come to a stop.
I mean, it probably would just it wouldn't really come to a complete stop, but the problem is that it would open up competition to the Chinese all the way, and then at that point, it's a losing battle for the United States on the trade sphere because at that point, a lot of people don't get this. Once you put yourself in the middle of the road, everyone's got a battle for your attention. That's what happened with North Korea for a good while, and that's actually why North Korea was economically more successful than South Korea all the way up until the 1980s, is because they put themselves in the dead middle of the road. They kind of leaned a little bit towards Maoist communism, and they kind of leaned a little bit more towards Leninist as well. So that led the Soviet Union and Communist China to battle for the favor of North Korea as far as an economy went. And so the North Koreans were able to live in unmitigated splendor compared to South Korea all the way up until about the mid-1980s. And then that's when the South Koreans, under the economic principles of Syngman Rhee and Park Chung-hee, were able to actually rocket themselves way ahead of the North Korean economy and then leave them in the dust for good. But the Europeans would be putting themselves in the middle of the road a lot like that. They wouldn't lean towards America or China, making both of them have to battle for the market share inside of Europe. And that's a position that the United States wouldn't want to find itself in, because that means that the overall amount of exports that are being shipped to the United States could decrease. That means that the amount of consumer goods that are being consumed at this point could decrease, meaning that overall economic output is also decreased, and the GDP per capita would begin to drastically slow year over year, meaning that there would be less money moving around the American economy and less economic prosperity to be had during that time. So I believe at this point that whether people trust the President of the United States or not, the President of the United States is pretty much forced into a corner that they have to largely continue to support Ukraine, lest they see untold consequences both from the Russians and Europe in their own right. There will never be an end to the war in Ukraine on current Russian negotiating positions, and not only that, the Europeans will largely start to economically screw over the United States if they break out of the Western sphere and become their own separate sphere. So with that in mind, I hope I addressed that well, but we still have loads of news to cover outside of that. I would want to cover really quickly, while we're pretty much inside the United States at this point, that a Texan rancher was killed today by an improvised explosive device that was detonated apparently by a cartel group near to the border. It does appear at this moment that that's the first U.S. casualty that's ever been reported so far as of this point in 2025 from cartel violence and activities near to the U.S.-Mexican border, most likely suggesting that U.S. military actions may start to commence very soon with support of the Mexican government within the northern border regions of Mexico and within the southern border regions of the United States of America. But once again, we'll have to be watching that one a little bit more. We're not here to talk about the domestic political situation with that, but more so the actual ground battle situation that most likely will commence later, which we're largely expecting will most likely be some sort of an isolated airstrike campaign against the cartel, more so leaning on a low-intensity form of warfare that is more asymmetrical than an actual conventional battle against the cartel, considering that they're a non-uniformed, largely insurgent force in their operating style. But moving on from that and out of the U.S.-Mexican border, it is time for us to move on into another shocking piece of news that happened all the way around the other side of the world in China, or more so specifically in between China and Taiwan, or more so in between Taiwan and their island holdings at Penghu County. Noot, noot. We were able to hear today. Oh. I had to do it, man. Like, I had to do it eventually. But we heard today that a unprecedented diplomatic action, or largely an escalatory action, has been made today by the Chinese and responded to in kind by the Republic of China, aka Taiwan. We were able to hear that a Chinese vessel has been apprehended today off of the coast of Taiwan. According to what we've been able to hear, the Taiwanese Coast Guard has detained the Chinese vessel Hong Tai, which was caught destroying an undersea telecommunications cable between Taiwan and Kinmen Island, located near China. The entire crew, all Chinese nationals, have been arrested and are being taken back to Taiwan. Official Taipei may view the incident as an act of sabotage by the People's Republic of China. But here's the video today showing the Taiwanese Coast Guard boarding the Hong Tai, taking the crew, and also impounding the vessel simultaneously. Here's the Taiwanese Coast Guard boarding the vessel. When you see more Coast Guard personnel boarding the vessel to apprehend the crew and also impound the vessel.
目前1名海巡人员平安登艇。
I never knew Pengu was this militarized.
Man, Pingu out here, he's not sounding friendly anymore. He's going, you know, he's getting angry. Like,
they brought the angry father out.
Oh, dude. And also, you see this Taiwanese Coast Guard catamaran over here to the side as well. Just in case you're thinking, where was the firepower? There's the firepower right over there. It's not the small patrol vessel. It's actually the larger Coast Guard vessel right next door. But that's the end of the clip, and it does appear that at this point, an unprecedented diplomatic action has been made. And this is why. Taiwan is in a little bit of a weird position. Most countries in the world do not recognize them as a sovereign nation, including the United States of America. Meaning that for most people on a diplomatic level, I'll explain this, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, Taiwan forever! Let me just explain what the diplomatic level is here, and then you can get to doing that. Taiwan isn't considered an actual country by anyone. It's considered a breakaway province from China. That's the legitimate diplomatic understanding by practically everyone. And the United States largely understands it as well. We do not recognize Taiwan as a sovereign country, but we do recognize the jurisdiction of the Republic of China's government over the island, leaving it in a little bit of a catch-22. Because we recognize the Taiwanese government, but we don't recognize Taiwan as an independent country. This means that for the diplomatic level, for pretty much most every other country in the world, including the United States, a breakaway region of China has successfully apprehended and impounded an entire crew of Chinese nationals and also taken their vessel back to the Taiwanese mainland and impounded the ship. This is also the exact same way that the Chinese government views the situation, so this is a major escalation. A huge one, as a matter of fact, because it's leaving Taiwan in a little bit of an interesting spot. Because technically, the only country that probably would come to their support and military aid would be the United States of America, because we recognize the Republic of China's government as having jurisdiction over the island, meaning that any actions that were taken against Taiwan, we largely would consider an aggressive action against the jurisdiction of the Republic of China's government, and largely, in a roundabout sense, an act of war against Taiwan, meaning that we would come to their defense. However, we do not know yet how the People's Republic of China is going to be reacting to the scenario, or this impoundment that happened today, along with the arrest of the Chinese crew and their return to the island of Taiwan. We have no clue, because there's been no statement yet, actually, by deliberate act from the People's Republic of China's government. We do not know if there's going to be any sort of hostile action that commences from this, or whether this will create a large armed standoff, or whether this will be a very diplomatic exchange in between China and Taiwan for the release of the vessel and the crew. We're not sure at all at this point. But the situation certainly is one that's unprecedented. I personally could not find any examples of the Republic of China impounding a Chinese flagged and operated vessel within their waters or within any waters around the surrounding area ever since the early 1950s, which was just a few years after the end of the Chinese Civil War, which created Communist China and the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan. So it does appear that a lot of people right now are wondering whether this will cause a crisis or not. And it actually seems like a lot of people are fairly split on this. Some people are saying that it's a bit of a 50-50 chance it could create a major diplomatic incident, or it may not. Some others are saying that China will respond pretty harshly to this, and others are saying that the Chinese are just going to ignore the situation altogether and leave it at what it is right now. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So will it cause a crisis? That's the big question. And 38% said it's really a 50-50 chance right now of it actually causing a crisis between Taiwan and China, while 29% said yes, China is going to respond harshly to this, and 27% said no, China will ignore the situation. And this is a bit of a tough one because, like the enforcer said, this is the first known instance, I think, in modern times that Taiwan has seized a Chinese flagged vessel of any sort. So it would seem like, since the tensions are pretty high between those two countries, that by doing this, it might cause a pretty harsh response by the Chinese government. But with that being said, the Chinese could choose to ignore it since it is just I guess, a Chinese owned vessel of some sort. But I would honestly be with the 38%. It's kind of a 50-50 chance, and we might be hearing something soon about this. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say there is a 50-50 chance that this could fly completely off the handle or that it will be completely ignored. Like either way that it goes, it's going to be a very interesting kind of an occurrence. I have never heard of a seizure of a vessel like this, and the People's Republic of China is mostly going to look at this almost as piracy because they don't recognize the legitimacy of the Republic of China's government or the existence of Taiwan as an independent nation. So they may look at this as an act of piracy by the Republic of China, which is Taiwan, by the way, because some people are going to start cussing me out because they're ignorant and they don't know the difference in between the Republic of China and the People's Republic of China because they aren't well read and learned. Most of y'all are, but there will be one that pops up in the chat here very soon that will do that and once again make a fool of themselves. But beyond that, there is also the chance that the Republic of China may look at this in a very peaceful kind of a way and go, hey, why don't we try and negotiate the release of these folks because they really didn't do anything. That might also be a decent likelihood as well. It's just that it's really hard to tell because China has a whole bunch of ways that they operate with Taiwan. It's not all aggressive. They actually do try and work with the Kuomintang, which is a political party inside of Taiwan, to try and further the idea of a peaceful joining of the mainland to Taiwan. That's something that has been done in the past and is still being done right now in the present, but we don't really know if they're going to do either route. So it's a little bit of a hard one to gauge at this point. So I'm going to have to largely leave it that I'm with the majority. It's probably a 50-50 chance it could go either way at this point, but still, we'll see. But anyways, moving on from that, we have also been able to hear something a little bit shocking and interesting as well. And this is something that we really didn't cover on the channel when the statement was made because I found it to be a goofy statement, but this is a statement that was made by the President of the United States. The President of the United States, about 2 days ago, to pretty much try and paraphrase exactly what he said, many countries around the world are spending a lot of money on their military, including China, Russia, and the United States. I'd like to cut down military spending. I think I can get China and Russia to agree on that very easily. It's not good for any of us. Not great at all. Less guns. So then that statement was made 2 days ago. And 2 days later, we finally got a response from the Chinese officially. The answer was hell no. They're not going to be halving their military spending budget anytime soon. They have completely rejected the refusal outright. And a direct quote is that China rejects the U.S. president's proposal to mutually cut military defense budgets by 50%, meaning that the answer is no. So there we have it. Largely knew that that was going to be the answer because I don't know if people know this or not, and I think that the president might be living in kind of like this fictitious land where, you know, you listen to the song "Why Can't We Be Friends" and then everything just kind of like schmoozes over and everything's fine. But we live in a nasty world, and living in this world is a bit of a nasty business sometimes, and you really can't just sit there and say, oh, you know, the United States is going to give up all of its nuclear weapons and we're going to half our military in size and spending. Won't y'all do that too? Because we want to be bestie westies and buddy wuddies. Why can't we all get along? That's not how it works. China has its own economic interests and military interests, much like the United States has and much like Russia has. Telling them to halve their military spending and budget is pretty much telling them to give up on their own national ambitions just because someone asked them nicely. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. And when that was said today by the Chinese, I was like, well, that was expected. That's why we didn't even cover the statement from the president when it was made a couple of days ago. And that's why I'd also say it's a foolish kind of a thing to denuclearize the United States as a quote-unquote example, because no one else is going to denuclearize. That's just a very goofy kind of a concept. That's the reason why there were arms races in the past, is because everyone started going, crap, they might outshoot me in a conflict. Maybe we need to build bigger battleships, bigger guns, better planes, better nukes. It's been like that ever since the beginning of the military revolution that happened in the 17th century. It's still like that today. So to think that they would have ever agreed to that, that's just ridiculous. And so I wanted to put that out there because that was the official Chinese statement today. And it is exactly as I said, that it doesn't take a history expert to be able to understand that. That's just how the world works. But moving on from that, it is time for us to move on out of the East Asian area and on into the middle of the East. Or really, the Far East, as this is called. This is, Iran is technically actually a part of the Far East. The Middle East is pretty much the Arabian Peninsula, and then the Near East is Syria, Turkey, and this area up here, including Armenia. So, just to let y'all know that, the whole thing isn't the Middle East, actually. That's a bit of a misunderstanding, and kind of a modernization and corporatization of the whole thing. I like to call it for what it is. This is the Far East. But nevertheless, we were able to hear that within the Far East, things were not going well today. Because down in Chabahar, there was an armed rebellion in Iran, like a legitimate armed rebellion. They literally took up guns and arms against the Islamic Republic of Iran's government and started an armed uprising in the town of Chabahar. We're going to be showing you all the clips that we have so far. These are some interesting clips right here. Oh, what was that?
What the hell was that?
Let's listen to that again. Let's listen to that. Oh, someone's getting
I don't know what's up with that.
Dude, they said, Habibi, there's an open revolt outside, and they went, oh man, I got real bloodlust. Oh, it's like, what the hell? It's like, what's going on? But anyways, let's get to the rest of the clip here. Well, you can see what appears to be the insurgents on the rooftops. It appears that they're in defensive positions. You can see one guy with an RPG, and another guy with what appears to be a PKP machine gun. Oh, he fired the RPG. And there's that sound again.
Oh my God.
Oh my Lord. Moving on into our next clip. We also got to see some explosions in the middle of Chabahar today. We can see some more of the insurgents on the rooftops. We now hear a larger firefight happening in between government forces and the insurgents in Chabahar. But that's the end of the clip right there. A little bit of an interesting one. And still, it looks as though there's just a legitimate armed uprising happening in Chabahar. We haven't really heard a lot of updates beyond those two clips. We do believe that it's still ongoing at this point. It's just that information is incredibly sparse to come out of Chabahar at this time. While that's been going on, we also were able to hear of some major news going on within central Iran, or largely throughout most key areas of Iran that deal with nuclear weapons research and development, as we were able to hear that the Iranians are beefing up their air defense around these sites. According to the Telegraph, Iran has put its defense systems around its nuclear sites on high alert amid fears of an attack by Israel and the United States. It does appear that at this point, the Iranians are waking up every day in fear of a U.S. attack or an Israeli attack on the nuclear weapons and research development sites, and they're going to sleep every single night and largely having sleepless nights, meaning that they really aren't going to sleep. They're just laying down in the bed and sitting there in that hot sweat that I'm sure many of y'all have gone through before when you're really stressed out and trying to go to sleep, and then they wake up the next day and they repeat the cycle again. It appears that they may actually be largely in fear for good reason. We are understanding that Israel and the United States are still sort of gearing up to deal with these strikes in the future. It's just that we don't know when they will happen or what will happen as a result of that. But we also got to hear some interesting news out of southwestern Syria today as well, as the Israelis have been conducting airstrikes within southwestern Syria. Israeli Minister of Defense of Israel, Katz, confirmed that aircraft of the Israeli Air Force are currently striking targets in Syria, with these strikes being conducted as part of a new policy to pacify southwestern Syria. Katz stated, "We will not allow southern Syria to become southern Lebanon. Any attempt by the Syrian regime forces and the country's terrorist organizations to establish themselves in the security zone in southern Syria will be met with fire." We were able to see video evidence of the airstrikes being conducted within the region, which we were able to see right here. And we were able to hear that he got mail. And then at the end of our little bit of news here in southwestern Syria, we were also able to hear that Israeli defense forces are now advancing even deeper into Syria that were not previously under their control, near to the Golan Heights, although we do not have exact information at this point about Israeli armed forces whereabouts or what advanced routes they're actually taking at this point. That all appears to be kept under lock and key, at least for now, so we'll have to be waiting to get some additional news on that and to be able to get a real update on what's going on within southwestern Syria. But it does appear that Israeli military actions in southwestern Syria will be ramping up significantly as Israeli actions against Iranian proxy forces seem to be reaching what may become a fever pitch again here in the near future, and also lead up to the Israeli attacks against Iranian nuclear weapons development and research sites. Beyond that, however, a lot of people have been talking about the armed uprising that's going on in Jabahad. And armed groups have started an uprising in southern Iran, specifically southeastern Iran. And also, some people are also wondering, on top of that as well, will this escalate into an Iranian civil war? And it seems as though some people are saying it will escalate really severely. Others are saying that this is more so just kind of like the whole little Iranian deal. It won't really go further than here. And some people are saying it's really a 50-50 chance. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well? Because it's not every day that we hear about some sort of an armed uprising in Iran, but this isn't exactly the first time either. So what's everyone thinking about it?
So it looks like 31% of the audience said no, it will go no further from here, while another 31% said it really is a 50-50 chance, and 26% said yes, it will escalate severely. And to say it's going to go into a civil war, I would say it's a little bit too early to say that. It's really in the very, very early stages. This could get put down pretty quickly. So I would say it's probably, I'm actually going to take the cop-out option again and say I'm with the 31% that said it's really a 50-50 chance, because right now it looks like it's isolated to 1 or 2 regions of Iran at the most. So that, once again, these groups are actually well armed. Like, they're fighting the IRGC quite heavily, but it could be put down pretty quick because, of course, they've got to be very determined and also have big numbers to actually take down the Iranian government. So I'm with the 32% now. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm largely going to be with the 31% that said it will probably go no further than here. Very interesting kind of a thing, but to be entirely honest, it's very localized within an isolated area of Iran, not really close to any other major population areas. And for those reasons, I believe this is going to end up being an isolated incident that will be dealt with by the Islamic Republic of Iran's government and be put down and not really turn into a major kind of a conflict. It just doesn't really have the necessary ingredients to be able to do that. And it also doesn't really appear that they have any support within the Iranian government or the Iranian armed forces that would really help off to really springboard this thing into actually having a good chance of creating a larger internal Iranian conflict. I just don't really think any of that's there at this point for that to happen. Might end up being wrong in a couple of days, and hopefully I would be, but it just seems to be so isolated that it probably won't have that kind of a chance. But also, Matthew, I like how the Iranians are developing a nuclear weapon, but they have a town called Nuke Abad. Apparently saying that nukes are bad. Like, they literally named a town Nukes Are Bad, and then they make a nuke like crazy right there.
Man, I tell you what, you don't want to live in nuke bad while you're trying to develop a nuke. That's kind of contrary.
Man, if you did that, you might be a lackey.
Man, a lackey.
But man, I guess we need to go on to the next one. You know what I mean? Because this is nothing but a tisk, a tisk.
Man, that's a stretching. That's stretching right there.
That's stretching, man. That's stretching. But anyways, it is time for us to move on out of all of the international news, beyond the major news that we've been able to hear in the Middle East and the Western Pacific, and not only that, from inside the United States. But it is time for us to move on a little bit on out of this area and on up north once again, back into the Ukrainian heartland, where most of the major news from today was going down. And it was going down, that's for sure. The Russians were not doing well today again. It looks like they were doing pretty horrendously, but before we get into all those fine details with a fine-tooth comb, I do have to thank the 10,000 people who have been here tonight at the peak. Actually, it was about 10.1 thousand, and the 37,000 people who have watched so far. Pretty cool to know that so many people have been here. I gotta thank you all so much for watching so far. We still have a lot to go, but if you have been enjoying it so much, at least up to this point, hit that little subscribe button. Maybe hit the like button too, why don't you? We would be happy to see it. And before we move on to the next part, I do want to give us all a little bit of a breather here before we get into the next big piece of news, which is largely the entirety of the Ukraine wars that happened today. Matthew, what kind of questions do we have from the chat?
All right, so our first super chat of the night is going to go to Peace with War, who puts in a very generous $100 donation to help keep the show running, of course. And thank you very much, Peace with War, for that very generous support. And he said, I can't really predict what's going to happen, but thanks for the great news coverage, and take a question from the chat.
And thank you so much for the massive support, Peace with War. And I got to be honest, it's very hard to tell what's going to be happening in the future. There's a lot of flip-flopping, but we take it as each day comes, and we have to take government statements at face value. That's something that a lot of people don't know, is that official statements from government officials, according to the rules of how we report on this channel, we have to take it at face value. So if the president says today that he likes Ukraine, he likes Ukraine. Like, that's how we have to report it. And if tomorrow he says he hates him again, then he hates him again, and that's just what it is, and that's the official stance. I can't really get into being the arbiter, and some people don't know that. I can't really get into the arbiter of saying whether something's true or not. We take statements at face value. And largely that's worked incredibly well throughout most of the war, so hopefully it'll continue to work well, although this is largely an unprecedented scenario. I've never seen anyone flip on their stance on Ukraine 3 times in 1 month. Like on an official standpoint. But beyond that, however, I do have to say that while the future is uncertain, things are looking good, at least for today. And that is a pretty good thing in its own right. Because the mineral deal doesn't really sound like it's going to be ripping the Ukrainians off. It really more so sounds like the U.S. companies are going to be able to invest in Ukraine and make profits, but the U.S. is also simultaneously going to be building up a fund off of those profits to rebuild the state of Ukraine post-war. At least that's how the agreement is now being presented at this point. So that actually sounds largely like a win-win for Ukraine, and there really isn't a bad way to look at it. On top of that, it was also guaranteed that further military support would continue to Ukraine based off of that agreement, and not only that, the war probably will continue on for some time now, because it also looks like the Russians are still unmoving on their stance on the conflict so far. So I think that we're
Honestly, Enforcer, like, truthfully, like, I know the flip-flopping's gotten old after a while and things like that. People get very sick of that really quickly. But once again, no politics. But as long as the decisions are being made that are fair to Ukraine generally, and we don't know all the details about the minerals deal just yet, it could still be somewhat unfair. We just don't know. But at least the United States and the current president and the administration is sort of taking a more positive approach to Ukraine. Hopefully it continues like that. Because if it does, that's what we advocate for here on the channel. So that would be a good sign if it keeps going that way long term. Hopefully, it's not just a temporary thing. Hopefully, it's a long term thing.
Also, someone said there's not a security guarantee. Well, that was never supposed to be laid out in the mineral deal. Like, that's something for a peace treaty at the end of the conflict. I think you're getting them mixed up there, because I don't believe the Ukrainians were even saying, for us to sign the mineral deal, we have to have security guarantees. I think they were saying, we need further military support if you want to sign a mineral deal. And that was how the mineral deal was originally approached within the first week of the new presidency. The president stated that he was going to approach a mineral deal for Ukraine to where we would mine a set of value of minerals, and they would also get a set value of military support in return. And when that was presented originally, we said that that was actually an incredibly good deal, because it ends up being a net benefit for both sides. But then the deal completely changed, and it was, we want $500 billion worth of minerals for absolutely nothing in return, and this is going to be supposedly repaying us, the United States, for the military support we have provided so far, which was then jacked up and messed up. And then not only that, we were threatening to withdraw all U.S. support in the future if they didn't agree, and then also withdraw Starlink, which was pretty screwed up. It was a raw deal. But now we're hearing that the deal and its terms have completely changed. Now it's going to be that U.S. companies are allowed to extract these raw metals and send them to Ukraine, but the profits are going to be put into a pool, an investment pool for the large part, that will be earmarked for when the conflict ends. The money will go into rebuilding the state of Ukraine, so all of the destroyed cities and industries, and then also help out with the Ukrainians largely continuing to invest in their own economy and start to grow their gross domestic product. So as far as the current mineral deal, at least from what we're hearing today, it actually is once again back to being a net benefit. The Ukrainians not only are going to be getting continued military support into the future at this point, and will continue to see that they are able to fight against the Russian Federation, but they're also going to be building up pretty much a investment pool, so that way they can rebuild themselves after the conflict's over. And then the United States also gets the benefit of getting the raw minerals. So once again, it's back to what it originally was during the first week of the presidency, where it actually does sound like a pretty fair deal, at least based off of the public presentation of it. And I see some people trying to say it's a mob-style protection racket. Well, back like yesterday and the day before it was, but under the current terms, it doesn't really sound like that. Like, I would agree with you, but the thing is that, like, I don't really have like an invested stake in hating or liking the president. Once again, this is a non-political channel, so if a deal sounds bad, it's bad. If a deal sounds good, it's good. The current deal that's been presented today, at least from what we're hearing publicly, is actually pretty good for Ukraine. Like, I really cannot complain about it too much, because also on top of that, even though there is a statement being made that this mineral deal is also going to be repaying the United States for prior support, it's also coming with a guarantee that they're going to be getting future military support. So really the whole statement of them repaying us for prior support, it doesn't mean anything, because with the current deal, they're going to be guaranteed future U.S. Tech and military support. So with that, it actually is back to being a pretty decent deal. And if that is the deal that Zelensky puts pen to ink on and actually signs on Friday, this is actually a pretty beneficial deal for Ukraine again. And I also saw someone say, so what's this new deal? Before we get on into the live chat question for peace with war, I'll answer that. So here is the current deal as it's presented today. Just to clarify everything, because I know there's a lot of confusion out there. The terms have been changing a lot. I know. We've been following it. It has changed a lot. It's really confusing. So let me lay out the terms as we heard them today. So the current terms are that the United States gets access to an unspecified amount of rare metals inside of Ukraine. So at this point, it could be nothing or it could be everything. With that in mind, the United States is able to invest in the extraction of these minerals and metals. If I'm understanding this correctly, Matthew, the metals are then going to be extracted and shipped to the United States, but most of the profits produced from that metal extraction and the profits from selling those metals to the United States will be put into an investment pool that also will include other countries that may get involved in this sort of an arrangement, that then will be held until a peace treaty is signed in between Russia and Ukraine, and then the money that was built up over that period of time that the war has continued will then be poured right back into the Ukrainian economy for them to be able to rebuild all of their destroyed cities and also all of their destroyed industries that have been ravaged from the conflict, and then allow for them to be able to be an economically stabilized country and also immediately pretty much springboard them into hopefully being economically successful, a lot like the Polish Republic. So that seems to be the current arrangement. And in exchange on the American side for what we get with the metals, the United States is going to be continuing to provide military support in terms of equipment and also finance to the state of Ukraine so that way they can keep on fighting until an amenable peace agreement is made in between the Russian Federation, the United States of America, and Ukraine. That appears to be what we're hearing today so far. So that is pretty much everything from A to B that we've heard today. So it sounds good. Like, I'll be honest, it sounds way better than the last agreement we heard 2 days ago, which was pretty much screwing over Ukraine with no benefit in sight. So this is a lot better of a deal, and I'll be honest, if this is the deal that's agreed upon, this is really a win-win. The United States gets an economic benefit out of it, and the Ukrainians get practically unlimited soup and salad until the end of the war. So everyone would be winning in this kind of an arrangement, and there really isn't a loss to be had. With that, I hope that does address some questions about the deal well, or at least kind of lay out the current terms that we've heard from how we've heard it. But beyond that, let's get that live chat question for peace with war. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one is going to go to Old Warrior from the live chat. They said, is that rebellion in Iran in the same area where they were fighting Afghanistan over the water?
Interesting question. Kind of, sort of, not really. It's down in Chabahar, which is right along pretty much the Iranian border, but it's the Iranian border with Pakistan. So, yes, it's in the eastern fringe of the country, but it's not up around the area where the water wars were being fought, around the area of Shar-e-Sukte, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is actually a river area, or a river valley, that they were both fighting over for water rights, because the Afghans had illegally built inside of their territory dams that were holding up a lot of that water, and the Iranian parts of the river were starting to run dry, which was affecting local agriculture. And so there were some limited border skirmishes and exchanges over that water supply, but that was actually a couple of 100 miles north of Chabahar. So technically, I mean, it's in the eastern part of the country, but nowhere near to that actual area where the water wars were fought. With that, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can, and thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running Peace with War and sponsoring that live chat question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to PNWEXCSO, who put in a very generous $100 donation, and a huge shout, by the way, for the second largest super chat of the night, and we appreciate that. And they said, keep it up, and you young men are contributing to preserving freedom, and God bless, and it's reassuring to see the next generation continue the fight, and a retired U.S. Air Force here.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for the support. I messed it up. I said thank you so much for the support. That's what the United States wanted to say 2 days ago, Matthew. Thank you very much for the port. Like we thought we want half of the port. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Panexco. And thank you so much for enjoying the channel and supporting it massively. And thank you so much for enjoying our kind of commitment that we have on the channel. We always want to support Western and American interests wherever they may lie. And I have a very specific kind of a viewpoint that we try and push forward on this channel for what's beneficial for everyone in the United States and the Western world as a whole, because together we succeed massively, and we have been for 70 years, and I think that that kind of relationship should continue for as long as we can stretch it. If it's another 100 years, that would be amazing if that was the case. I would hope that in my lifetime I never see that the Western sphere ever really fractures or breaks in any kind of a significant way, or that any country like the United States or any other Western country that's having unparalleled economic success begins to backslide anytime in the future. I think that would be horrendous. And I got to thank you so much for really appreciating our stances and perspectives that we have on this channel and the analysis, because we keep it as non-political as possible, as analytical as it can get, hopefully, and also making sure that our analysis of world events, battlefield occurrences, such things are as well researched or well thought out as they possibly can be. And I got to thank you so much once again for really appreciating that, and thank you so much for being a retired member of the U.S. Air Force. Thank you so much for being here and really enjoying the channel. And also, by the way, since we're on the topic of folks who are retired from the armed services, although this isn't really something from the armed services, I would like to give a massive shout out to someone who sent something to our P.O. box. Sadly, their name, like the part of the paper on their letter, Matthew, that had their name on it, it had been worn out apparently in the letter, so like that piece of paper fell off somewhere and I couldn't find it. So sadly, to whoever this was, couldn't find your name on the envelope or on the letter, but I thank you so much for sending us the gift in the P.O. box and also the kind letter. That was really kind of you and incredibly nice. And to let y'all know, this apparently was a retired member of the mounted police of the city of San Francisco. So the horsemen, the police horsemen that travel around San Francisco, he was one of the guys who had been doing that for 5 years, just retired, and he sent us the little police badges and also commemorative coins that were used by San Francisco mounted police divisions. It was really cool, really nice of you, and I gotta thank you so much for that. If you're out there watching tonight, we did get it finally, and we saw it, and that was really neat. Matthew and me always find little mementos and trinkets like that to be of the highest value and worth, because it's always a little personal touch about the kind of folks that watch this channel, and it's a really neat
That's
thing.
very cool.
Yeah, it's incredibly cool, and I got to thank you so much for sending that. And I also got to thank you so much as well, Panexco, for adding your contributed value to the Lee Spring Army by being a retired member of the U.S. Air Force and really enjoying the pro-American, pro-Western stance that we put out here on this channel. And also, one more thing before we move on, one more thing. Not to hype anyone up unduly, but I got the mixes back for the orchestrations that were worked on last week, and I let Matthew listen to them, and Matthew can tell y'all the mixes, which are still not done yet, are absolutely fire. Like, they are so good.
They are fire. Absolutely fire. Straight fire. Straight
I mean,
facts.
it's just unbelievable. We will be putting them out here soon, the final mixes on Patreon, so if you're a member on Patreon, you will be able to see them. They're going to be out pretty much a month before they come out, because we're planning on releasing all of that and putting out our finalized intro come around the week of the LSA, or LSA week as it's called, in late March. So we will be letting y'all hear all of that on Patreon a month early, but if you're not on Patreon, you'll be hearing it all when LSA week comes around, and we'll also be releasing the independent music videos. But for now, I have to work on getting the copyrights before they're put out, so that way whenever the Content ID system falsely claims them, I can actually of like the copyright number citation and then threaten legal action. So that way the content ID is removed and then never done again. Because we actually had to do that with the Armed Forces medley for a few times, and then finally I just like referenced the copyright number itself in the copyright office, and then the content ID never happened again. So I kind of have to get that set up this time beforehand, so that way we don't have to do all of the headache last time of contesting every single content ID that came through for about a month and a half. But beyond that, we cannot wait for y'all to hear it, and we really hope that y'all will enjoy our completed and finalized intro, which will look absolutely amazing. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again, Penexco, and with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're moving on into the remainder of the news.
All right, and the last one of the segment goes to Flowers, who puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much, Flowers, as well, for the generous support and helping to keep the channel running. And they said, do you think that Putin will be held accountable for all the damage done by the war?
And I thank you so much for the support, Flowers. Thank you for the huge support again tonight, and thank you for being here and throwing in some massive support. Really cool. I actually would have to say, at this point, I don't really think so. A lot of people would love to see it. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think the Russian Federation might be able to escape this war intact. And while it was devastating, I think Putin might end up dying a very uneventful kind of a death, probably choking on something or drowning or, you know, like stubbing his toe or getting an illness, something like that. He's probably going to just die of old age, to be entirely honest. I don't really think he ever will be held accountable. I don't even think the Russian Federation is going to be wildly jeopardized by the end of this conflict. Now, centralized government control is going to be weakened, I'm sure of that, but I don't really think it's going to be the kind of magnificent collapse that everyone was originally hoping for at this point, because I think that no matter what, we're going to try and ensure Russian governmental stability so that way things don't start to spiral wildly out of control and we see that the Russians get desperate or go crazy or anything because of that. But when Putin dies, there will be an opening for hopefully a new kind of a Russian government that would take Russia in a better direction, but I'm generally not optimistic about that sort of thing, because Russia has really never existed without some sort of a dictatorial or almost absolutist form of control governmentally. Look at the czars, look at the Soviet Union with the Supreme Soviets, and look at the modern-day Russian Federation with the presidents of Russia. Almost all of them, or pretty much all of them, have existed as near tyrants, complete tyrants that run the country with an iron fist. There really isn't a way for them to run Russia without it, because the only example I can think of in modern Russian and Soviet history would be Gorbachev, and literally everyone hates Gorbachev because he wasn't a dictator pretty much who ran the country with an iron fist, which is just the craziest thing ever, to be disrespected because you allow people to live freely. Like just to let you know, Gorbachev was the only Soviet, or the Supreme Soviet, if you want to call him that, that put out the Glasnost and Perestroika, which the two combined pretty much said Soviet citizens had the right to criticize the government, and they also had a right to conduct free enterprises of their own with, you know, of course, some pretty big strings attached that was still under relative governmental control. But those two things killed the Soviet Union, and the whole time that Glasnost and Perestroika existed, the whole thing was honestly used for everyone to shit on Gorbachev, which gave them the right to actually shit on people. Like that is stupid, man. Everyone sat there, and he was like, okay, y'all can talk about whatever y'all want to talk about now. There's freedom of speech. And they're like, the war in Afghanistan sucks, and you suck. It's like, how in the world? And then most of the complaints were, you suck because you allow us to say that you suck, and that's weak. You're just a weak little bitch. It's like, what? And then after the Soviet Union collapsed, everyone still treated him like that. Like, that's why he had to do, like, the Pizza Hut commercial and everything, is because he couldn't even get a job. Like that was the only way he could make money.
Interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know he did a Pizza Hut commercial.
Dude, he legitimately did a Pizza Hut commercial. We can pull it up. Like it's out there.
Oh, it's probably copyrighted or something, man. I wouldn't pull that up.
Well, I'm not gonna show the video, but I'll show like a still frame from it. Let's see here. Let me go Mikhail Gorbachev Pizza Hut commercial. There we have it. This is a part, I'm not kidding, of a Russian Pizza Hut commercial from the 90s. There's Gorbachev right there.
What the hell? Like, I didn't even know he was in those. That's crazy.
Dude, he was desperate for money after the Soviet Union collapsed, because he pretty much ended up becoming a common man with no money, and everyone disrespected him so badly. No one even really wanted to give him any kind of an opportunity at making it. So he had to go and do things like hawking Pizza Hut in Russia to just make a living and get by until he died like a couple of years back.
Jeez. That's hitting rock bottom right there, having to go work for the Hut.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's rough, man. Like, that's rough. Like, like, there are lows, but having to do Pizza Hut commercials after you were the leader of the Soviet Union, now that's a brand new kind of a low. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you so much for the support, Flowers, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who have made this thing possible. And a big thanks to you so much once again for always sticking with the channel, and also being a personal friend of mine behind the scenes. And so with that, big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on into the actual Ukraine war news, which there is plenty of. We were able to see that the Ukrainian 40th Aviation Brigade was, of course, busy at work again today, playing absolute drum and bass. When you see all the victory marks on the side of the MiG-29, we can see them going through the setup process, and also figuring out how the video editor works.
Yeah, put in different filters. It looks terrible.
But you see them with their standard air-to-air loadout. It appears that this thing is mostly going to be conducting anti-drone operations. And we now see them taxing the MiG out. With a GCB forklift, that man is forklift certified. Y'all better watch out at the bar. He's getting all of the women. But we can now see them mounting up the external drop tank to the bottom of the MiG-29. The MiG-29 is one of the few Soviet-made aircraft that actually could equip an external fuel tank. Interestingly enough, I do not believe that the Su-27 really can, if I'm correct.
Man, if they do that color filter one more time, I tell you what, it's going to send me off the cliff.
And we see them doing a close zoom in on the MiG-29's cockpit, and we now finally see the MiG-29's taking off the sky. Jesus, can they stop playing around with the video editor? Like, please, what is this?
Oh my god, it's like a meme reel or something.
Bro, dude, this right here is the video edit that you do. You know that sound effect? That's the one that you would use. Like, dude, the pretty bad video editing. But in the meantime, we did get to see that the air defense up near Kyiv was working hard in the night. It almost sounded like a cartoon sound effect reel, but here's the clip. They got it. Also, we have a medieval knight out there that just claimed to win over a peasant. He went, ah! You know, it's like the peasant has been slain.
Really?
Man, the beginning of the clip, though, was raw chaos. Like, you can't even really tell what's going on. like legitimately, like it's like you just entered the Looney Tunes land of sound effects at the first, like, 4 seconds of the video. But moving on from that clip, and moving on from Sir Hans Capon, who just defeated someone, we're moving on into the Kursk Oblast, where we were also able to see that the Ukrainians are continuing to hold the lines, and largely the front appears to have been somewhat stagnant, because the only thing we really saw was some counter-drone activity, and that was about it. So it appears that both sides at this point have stopped their offensive actions, and the front has once again stabilized. And that's the end of that clip right there. Nice to see they were able to take out a Lancet. And moving on from that clip and on into our next one, further down near to Martinovka, we also get to see them hitting a couple of more Russian drones. Azala. Well, actually, I forgot what these are called. I call them the Ho, because Horton hears a Ho, but we can see the Ukrainians continuing to hit loads of them.
Smacking them one by one, down for the count. Count Dracula.
Man, I tell you, man. Boy, they are hitting so many of them, obliterating them, smacking them to smithereens, bled.
Oh, blят.
Holy moly! And I mean, oh, there's one of the original Lancets. That's actually like an old school Lancet where the wings are all the similar size and shape. The modern ones are the ones that truly look goofy with the tiny little winglets at the back. And that's the end of the clip, but they were wiping out drones in Kursk. I mean, holy moly, it was kind of droning on there at the end. But moving on from that and into our location unknowns, the Roadniks are back. We've got the Roadnik segment. Hey, but nevertheless, moving right on into the Roadnik section, here it is.
Oh no, not this thing.
Dude, it is literally a power washing like motor attached to some wheels and like some sort of like a garden wagon with a till. Like I don't know what that is.
и ебануться не обоссаться. Ну, блядь, мотоблоки ебошут
That is
штурмовать,
just
блядь.
terrible.
Ну где такое видно? Вот тебе штурмбригада, блядь.
Why in the world does this guy sound like thirsty? He's like, he's like a moving tractor of shit.
He's
like,
in disbelief. He's in shock. He's like, what does the board come to? What does it come to?
man, what's going on here? It's like, dude, what is going on with your voice? It's like that's an abomination, but the way the guy's talking is even scarier. But moving on to our next clip, we also got to see that Russian cavalry, mounted cavalry, is becoming a thing.
Серийное производство боевых роботов. Роботы, действительно, которые можно показывать в фантастических фильмах, когда в состоянии самостоятельно воевать.
Why in the world is it in almost every Russian clip now? It sounds like there's like a drunk or drugged out tweaker behind the microphone that's just talking in the most monotone voice. Because they're like this, man. Every time a clip starts, I went to McDonald's, I got the quarter pounder with cheese. The quarter pounder with cheese was very good cheese, delicious cheese. I also got a cup of water as well. And then I went down the street and I saw some guy and I went, oh, what is this guy doing here? What's going on around here? And then it started to rain. And it's like they just do that the whole clip. It's like, what is that? But also, what is this? Like they're literally mounted infantry, well, like mounted cavalry at this point. That is sad when you're getting to the point that the army is running out of equipment so much that cavalry and donkeys are making a return. It's almost like it's the 19th century again, and the Russians are about to fight the Battle of Borodino against Napoleon in 1813. It's like, they're just getting worse. And what's even getting worse is that donkeys are no longer issued free. Oh, no, they're like one donkey. The Russian military, the Department of Defense, the Ministry of Defense, I mean, is running out of donkeys already. Like, they're running out of them. So now, Russian military personnel are forced to buy donkeys with their own money. And one donkey costs 40,000 rubles. Now, it's time to do the rubles to US dollar translation. So, 40,000.
That's $461.90 for one donkey.
That's a lot.
That's actually quite a bit of money there. You got to buy, and also it's like, I don't know how long that poor donkey's going to last out there either. So, it's $500 in USD for a donkey. And also, what military is making their soldiers buy their own equipment? It's like they're fighting at your order. Like, why are they buying the equipment?
Man, the Russians like, I want one donkey, and then the Russian commissariat is like, that'll be $470, and then the Russians like, what? They're not free? No, they're not free. What are you? Some kind of a Czechos? I don't know. You want to buy one, don't you? So like, I hate to be in the Russian army these days, and we can see that they are legitimately speaking about having to buy them at their own expense. This guy is talking about it as well. And there it is, the donkey.
Why they blurred this guy's mouth?
Because they didn't want to let you see the shit coming out of his mouth. They just want you to hear it. Well, I guess you could say, the Russian army, you gotta pay to be an ass. Moving on from that, and that terrible donkey noise, it's time for us to get on into the Russian casualty report. But, holy
oh my goodness, they've gone back to 2 Bobcats. They went back down to the average. What happened? I thought they were making progress, but 2 Bobcats once again. But, Enforcer, tell us more about these losses.
It's not that bad. Miss Disa, keeper of the records, has given us the casualty report for the day, and it appears to be bussin'. 1,300 troops have been lost, increasing the 7-day average to 1,206. Very good year, mind you. 122 drones is the 18th highest daily loss, and it's a drop from the prior days. 138 supply trucks is the 16th highest loss, and it's above the 7-day average. But you know something, Matthew? What happened in the year 1206? What happened in 1206? Because I said it was a pretty good year, and I was like, I don't even know what happened. Oh, in the year 1206, when Temujin, which is, by the way, Genghis Khan, son of Yasugai, was elected Genghis Khan of a federation of tribes on the banks of the Yan'an River. I would actually have to say 1206 was not a great year for many, because Genghis Khan would go on to pillage and destroy most of Asia and parts of Europe. So, I don't know about that. Like, maybe 1,206 wasn't that good of a year. But moving on into the casualty report, the 1,300 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 11 APCs, 138 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, 26 artillery pieces, 122 drones, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. Overall, it was a pretty good day. Pretty decent, and I gotta say, we love to see it. Now, I don't know what's up with this, but people are in the chat saying stop being political, and as far as I can recall, I just want to make this a little bit clear, I haven't been political at all tonight, and we've been giving raw analysis, so I don't know where that's coming from. I'll be entirely honest with you. It seems like maybe a new wave of bots. I'm not entirely sure, because we've avoided being political at all. We have said that actions are good when they're good, actions are bad when they're bad, and when it looks like things are good, we say they're good. If you take that as being political, I'm going to assume that you're a Kool-Aid drinker of one political party or the other, because that's happened either way that we've gone at this point. And look, I'm not here to appease you if you think that the current president is perfect and he can't do anything wrong, or that he's terrible and he does everything wrong. If you're that kind of a person that's looking for that kind of a deal, this isn't your channel. You probably are looking for some sort of a really political channel like Ben Shapiro or Welcome Back Defenders. You're probably looking for that.
You know how it works. There's people that like take personal issues with everybody. And honestly, like I've said before, I have nothing personal against any of the presidents, regardless of who they are. It's like they're just people at the end of the day. They're just there to do a job. Honestly, there's some that are better than others, to be perfectly honest. I think we can all agree on that. But to go like too far, people out here, getting too personal with it and things like that, it's just politics. That's why politics has always been contentious.
It's business.
Because it's just business. It's just business. The guy who's there now, he's probably he might be a good guy to talk to. You never know. Some people might hate him personally or whatever, but he's just the president, and he's just there, and hopefully he makes good decisions, and that's just the end of it.
Yeah, it's just business. So if it's a good action, it's a good action. If it's a bad one, it's a bad one. We've been calling it for what it is, and now I see someone, Matthew, say observe more, praise less. You weren't saying that, and now you're kind of making it a little bit clear that you have a specific affiliation here with what you're saying. I didn't see you saying that a couple of days ago when I was saying that the president of the United States was making a terrible move and was giving Ukraine a raw deal. I didn't see you saying that then. I saw you backing it up. And now that I'm saying that the new revised deal actually does look beneficial for Ukraine, now you want to say that we should observe more and talk less. I'm going to be honest with you, that's going to start losing some respect in my eyes for you, like just being a little bit frank there, because I'm more so on the analysis side of things, and if something's good, it's good, and if it's not, it's not. I don't really care who's doing it, and I don't really care about the political affiliations these people have. It's business. I don't care what kind of a person is involved in the business. If it's good business, it's good business. If it's not, it's not. That is what it is, and we call it for what it is. But moving on from that and out of the location unknowns, it is time for us to move on into the northeastern areas of Ukraine. We have been seeing some fairly interesting deals up here. And also, sorry, I thought you were talking to me, and so very sorry about that. But moving on from that, we were able to see some Russian forces getting slammed by the Ukrainians up in this area by the 14th Brigade, which has been a little bit quiet lately, interestingly. And we can see them slamming them. Oh! Obliterating them in the trees.
Man. And also, I see people bringing up political things like domestically. We don't cover that at all. We only cover the geopolitical side of it, and that's it. So we can't even comment on things happening here domestically. That's just something for other channels to cover, not us.
Yeah, that's not something we touch with a 10-foot barge pole. But moving on from that, we also got to see a German-Portuguese Leopard 2A6 inside of the Ukrainian armed forces within the northern area. And I got to say, Leopard 2A6s just look clean. I don't know what that is, but the Leopard 2A6 is a pretty clean tank. I mean, look at that thing.
You gotta like it.
You just gotta like it. It's German engineering at its finest. Moving on from that and a little bit further on down, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting Russian forces within the northern area. We kind of skirt through the northern area. There isn't really much that happens up here in terms of frontline developments, so losses are just that. They're just losses. They don't really amount to much in terms of frontline action. And when you see them hitting at Strela 10M, holy moly!
Holy cow!
And that's the end of that clip right there. But moving a little bit further on down and towards Cremena, we also got to see the Whiskey Squad in action with their 40mm Mark 19. And everybody loves a good Mark 19. And we see them racing around with a Humvee, and we now see them setting up that Mark 19. You know, something else with 19 was making the rounds a couple of years ago, but this year it's going to be the Mark 19. Oh, and,
oh my God. Oh, whoa.
Whoa, Jack, whoa.
They're walking through these forest here like it's numb. Whoa, but it's not. It's look, an ammo can. Whoa.
The trees, they're speaking Juche. Like, get them. What the hell's going on around here? We see them placing the Mark 19 very carefully onto its tripod. We now see them loading up the nades.
I like that big old like charging handle they got on that one.
Oh, and look at it go. Ah, dang it, I was hoping there would be raw noise. But that's the end of the clip. Very interesting to see. Moving on from that and a little bit further on down the lines, once again, not really a lot to analyze up in this area. Not much happened. Beyond the losses, that is. But moving a little bit further on down and towards the Touretsk battlefield, we did get to see the Russians getting slammed near to the area of Kurdimivka, which is right here. So, here's the clip. And there goes the Ukrainian drone, and in a second, they're about to start hitting. See them moving around in the trenches. Loading up the most peculiar looking MLRS. That almost looks like a Nebelwerfer from World War II. No joke, I think that might actually be like the modern equivalent of a Nebelwerfer, because I have never seen that system used before. If any of y'all can tell me what that is, I would love to know. I actually do not know that artillery system off the top of my head. But you see them loading it. Clearing the opening and preparing it to fire. And firing it. That is one hell of a system. That is legitimately just a Nebelwerfer. I'm not even kidding. Let me go show you what I'm talking about. Because the name is funny, and the weapon is even funnier. The Nebelwerfer. Yeah, there we go. This is the Nebelwerfer. Any minute now, I can find a picture of this thing. Yeah, here we go. It's that.
That's yeah, it looks pretty similar actually.
Yeah, it looks just like it. It's a really weird kind of a system. But we see it's now concluded firing, and we see the impacts further down range. And it appears to be a blanket saturation form of an MLRS, probably a shorter range one as well. But that's the end of that clip. Very interesting to see. And also someone said, see if there's sound. Let's check. Does I generally assume there's usually music? Yeah, there's music. So,
oh, man.
Like, sadly, we don't get to hear the sound of the system actually working. But we did get to hear that the Ukrainians are still taking more ground in Touretsk as their counteroffensives are continuing to produce progress. They are advancing deeper into the city during the counterattack, and it does appear that they may start to threaten central Touretsk with being recaptured by Ukrainian forces and largely possibly forcing the Russians to retreat from the northern areas of the town. Moving on out of Touretsk, though, and the successful counteroffensive that's still going on in that area, we were able to see some North Macedonian-supplied Mi-24s conducting indirect fire support missions near to the Pokrovsk counterattack at this point in time. We see them tilting up, firing off the rockets, and then hitting the deck. And we can also see an Mi-17 joining in on that action as well. And that's the end of that clip, but still a neat one to see. Moving on from that and on into our next clip near to Novokhodivka, we also get to see some Russians getting shot down. Some drones, that is. 5th Brigade out here doing some work. Whoa, what do you mean, Jack? The 5th Brigade, I was out on the slag heaps with Xi Jinping, and we were talking about the slag. We were talking about Chris's mom. Come on, Jack.
Whoa, watch where you're going. Slam right into the bottom of it. Whoa.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. He used to go around with a chain. He beats you with it. Break your legs. Like,
They used to go around with the straight razors and bang them on the curb and, Rusty and, put them in the rain barrel and, let them, anyway.
let him fester a little, get a little rusted. So I went out there and I said, hey, what are you doing? Hey, looking for a shave? I know a barber. So I gave him a shave. I got him a little bit off the top. Moving on from that, I also got to see a Russian truck getting hit by an FPV.
Работала FPV по Уралу. Управление Селидово. Ехали только в ту сторону.
We can see the Russian vehicle hit by FPV. Blit. My legs, they turn blonde in the sun. But moving on from that, we also got to see the flying skull. That's what happens when Corn Pop would get a hold of you. Flying skull. And they were hitting things really hard. The greatness said, y'all really don't understand negotiations. I understand. I've seen more leaders than you seen when you were born, son. But I went to the spaghetti store and I stacked spaghetti and I took a trip on a plane and the sky, it was falling. And anyway.
Oh my God.
Look, listen. Do you think I don't know what I'm talking about? Do you think? But anyways, we can see them slamming them over and over and over. The flying skull unit was inflicting a decent amount of losses.
Look at this thing go. It's so maneuverable.
Man, and it's of course got the radio antennas as usual. It detects Russians, and it looks like Russians were detected. And that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that, very nice to see. And the counterattacks of Bekrovsk are still going well. Moving on from that and down towards Kurakove, where we're also able to see the 71st Jaeger hitting some rushes, but apparently that was a little spicy. I didn't think it was. But moving on from that and down to Velika Novosoka, we also got to see them dropping some anti-tank mines on the Russians. Someone said that I sounded like someone else, and that's not true, because I'm not putting the tallow up in that thing.
Oh, no, not a tallow.
You know, one way to study better is to use illegal narcotics. But moving on.
No.
I'm just kidding, by the way. That's not my words. That's someone else's words. And I think you'll kind of get who I'm talking about. But anyways, moving on from that, we also get to see down near Huilopol. The Russians were also getting slammed down here by the drone forces. And we can see the Russians getting slammed. Oh, damn, and they got a Starlink system right there. And a second one. How are the Russians getting so many Starlinks? How are they getting them? I have questions here, Matthew. I have questions.
Also, by the way, that guy actually did say that from what I heard. I think he said that on the video, that quote you were just saying right there. The guy you're referencing, I believe he said that at one point.
Yeah, he did, actually. If y'all are like, is that real? It was. Like, I actually saw it. Like, I actually saw the clip. But the fella that I'm doing the impersonation of, like, I'll let y'all make your own decisions on it. But he stated that in college, he would be in a bind to study, and it helped him to study to use a certain kind of an illegal narcotic. And we're not talking about Mary Jane here. We're talking about something else, a lot more, stronger than that. So when I heard that, I was like, what? I was like, oh, what? Dude, that's why the worm died. Like, he got in there and it died from toxicity. It's like, but anyway, so moving on from that, and into Nova Provovika, we got to see the Russians trying to extinguish an S-300. Didn't turn out too well. We can see the Russians right there trying to extinguish the system. And they're trying to put it out, but the fire is just raging horrendously at this point.
What are they doing? Fanning it with like blankets and throwing buckets of water on it or something?
No, bliet, it's water, bliet. I don't know where they're getting it from, but that thing's just still burning, and it doesn't really look like they... Is that just a mercenary? Like, that doesn't even look like a Russian soldier, dude. Just some random guy in a coat with an AK. Like, he doesn't even have a
walking
helmet.
past the thermals. Well, look at him. He's just like up to no good.
Oh, there's
another
Russian
one.
Dude,
What
the second
out
guy...
there? They're looking fishy as hell. Like they're out there sketchy and stuff.
Hey, Babu, have you ever gotten that mercenary contract? Like, oh, gee, Yogi, we're gonna go get him good. Oh, man. Dude, that's Hot Dog Man and his remaining viewer right there. They're just wandering around looking for content.
Jeez.
Oh, man. Goodness gracious. But moving on from that and on out of that clip, it's now time for us to move on down into Dzhankoy. Because we got to hear that the Russians were getting hit down in Dzhankoy, and my control room just died again. Oh, I'm so tired of the control room dying on me like that, Matthew, from that, little bleed that it does the whole show, the memory leak. Yeah. Oh, it just drives me crazy these days. But here's the attack in Dzhankoy.
У нас в Джанкое сегодня, блядь, фаер-шоу будет.
Да не, походу на Красногвардейской.
Да хуй его знаю, не знаю.
We hear it coming in.
А не, смотри, бля, уходит.
And in a second you'll see the bright orange flash. Okay, maybe not. But moving on out of Dzhankoy and on into the area of Krasnodar, we did get to hear in Krasnodar that there are explosions across the area. That just sounds like a bad night at Taco Bell.
Jeez. Oh, blah.
Moving on into our next clip, we can see the Russian air defense being activated, please. You can hear the rustling of clothes. And moving on into our last clip, you got to hear more. And that's the end of those clips. We don't know a lot about the damage from the attacks yet. We don't know that they happened and there were impacts. But any details about actual damage at this point we do not have. So we'll most likely have that by tomorrow. But moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, y'all know what time it is. It's time for the address from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on this very day of the war. And it's a bit of a longer lasting speech. So, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Говорив з президентом Макроном про його візит в Америку. Координуємо наші дії. Еммануель, дякую за підтримку. Сьогодні ж говорив з прем'єр-міністром Бельгії, зокрема про допомогу Україні, зокрема про використання заморожених російських активів, зокрема про спільні дії та контакти на рівні усього Європейського Союзу. Також наша команда вже почала працювати із тим, що партнери пообіцяли вчора в Києві на саміті підтримки України. Більш ніж 40 учасників саміту, онлайн і офлайн, лідери, інші представники держав, міжнародні організації, окрема зустріч в форматі з балтійськими та нордичними державами і також зустріч лідерів групи 7. Дякую кожному, хто був дійсно принциповим в такий день, день третіх роковин початку повномасштабного вторгнення. І ми в Україні цінуємо щопідтримку для нашої держави, наших людей. Партнери не тільки готові продовжувати, але й збільшувати, щоб швидше ми змогли досягти миру. Миру чесного, такого, який гарантує, що агресія не повториться. Британія в цьому році забезпечить військову допомогу більш ніж 5,5 мільярдів доларів. Норвегія підтверджує допомогу на рівні 3,5 мільярди доларів. Також маємо підтримку енергетичної безпеки, гуманітарної сфери. Іспанія мільярд євро в цьому році. Ми дуже цінуємо таке зосередження на підтримці. Швеція готує передачу систем ППО. Дякую. Данія надасть додатково 285 мільйонів доларів на зброю та боєприпаси для наших воїнів. Також працюємо для збільшення нашого флоту F-16. Цього року маємо вийти на всі заплановані показники. Балтійські держави разом з нордіками забезпечать оснащення і тренування підрозділів чисельністю в бригаду. І саме такі речі важливі для проведення ротації в нашій армії. Потрібні оснащені та навчені підрозділи, щоб підтримувати хлопців на фронті. Естонія підготувала пакет підтримки. Є домовленості з Литвою щодо подальших спільних кроків для оборони, зокрема захисту неба. Також напередодні 24 лютого ухвалені нові рішення про санкції проти Росії за війну. Євросоюз погодив новий пакет, є санкційні рішення Британії, Австралії, Нової Зеландії. Усім дякую за підтримку і будуть ще рішення. Зараз активно їх готуємо. Зустрічі, угоди, перемовини. Україна має бути сильною, щоб завдяки цій силі дипломатія спрацювала. Дипломатії вже багато, і події будуть тільки прискорюватись. Готуємо деякі формати з партнерами. Ще одне. Сьогодні зустрівся з парламентарями глобальної мережі парламентської підтримки України. Це важливо. Ми збудували дипломатичні контакти на всіх рівнях, від лідерів і парламентів до медіа і багатьох громадських організацій. Все це заради того, щоб вистояти в цій війні і щоб завершити її достойно. Саме так, як заслуговують наші люди. Український народ. Народ, який так сміливо бореться, здобуває повагу. І вже повага стає кроками на підтримку від партнерів. Пишаюся всіма нашими людьми, і кожна країна, яка допомагає зараз нам в Україні, насправді допомагає собі, щоб зберегти світовий порядок, в якому людське життя має значення. Слава Україні!
Героям слава! And with that, it is time for us to move on into the second segment of tonight's stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. It is one fun time in our stream, the only fun time, because, of course, it is very fun to talk to all of y'all, every single one of y'all. And, of course, we are going to be moving on into this second segment right now. But before we do, I do want to say to everyone who has been watching so far tonight, a massive thank you, a great thank you for watching this to this point in the stream. It has been an absolutely incredible night. 50,000 people have watched this stream from the beginning to now. And there are 7.1 thousand people here right now. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to subscribe. It is a crime to not subscribe to this channel. Also, one other thing, I would like to say that if you are hungry and you would like a snack, we are not sponsored by Grand from Ukraine. But with that, Matthew, take it away. What do we have?
All right, so jumping into our final question segment of the night, the most highly anticipated part of the stream, like I always like to say, we are fresh out of polls. So we have no more polls to address, so we will now be moving on to straight into our Super Chat questions proper. So our first one here goes to Gabby White, who puts in a very generous $30 donation. And thank you very much, Gabby, for the $30 support and helping to keep the channel running. And Gabby said, for the In-N-Out Burger Fund and the Fry Fund too, and LSA rocks.
For the fry fun, baby! And I cannot wait to get an In-N-Out burger someday. I'm still waiting on that someday. I still haven't gotten one yet. But we will eventually get one again, I hope. because it would be a wonderful thing. I think it'd be incredible to try an In-N-Out burger. I've had all the foods of the Southeast, every single one that could be imagined, except for the ones that I don't want to eat. And now I want to try out the Western cuisines, like In-N-Out burger. It has to be good.
I love an In-N-Out burger. It's so juicy. I love the burger. The fries, I'm honestly not too crazy about the fries, but I love the burger, though. The burger is good.
I'm not gonna lie, a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese isn't that bad. Like, it's not as bad as I remembered it to be.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I actually like those quite a bit.
Man, those are kind of bussin' for real. And you can get 2 of them for $9, which is insane in this kind of economy these days, because usually any other burger would cost just like $9 alone as a single burger. So I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, $9 for 2 of these? You can get fat. And that's what I want to be. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. We will make sure to eventually get an In-N-Out burger and some fries, I would hope. And a huge thanks to you so much once again for enjoying us and really enjoying what we do here, because we always try and make sure that it's a pretty well-presented show and that people can always get a good enjoyment out of what's going on here. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that it's addressed that incredibly well. And also, by the way, y'all, I am dying at this point to let y'all hear like a little snippet of one of the mixes. Like, I'm dying because, like, honestly, like, I was thinking about that after I brought it up, Matthew. I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they could hear one of the mixes? And I was like, I don't know. Like, we could play a small part of it for y'all, maybe of one. Maybe we'll see. What do y'all think about that? Let me know in the chat. Do y'all want to hear that or not? Like, and it will only be a small snippet. It won't be a whole song of any kind because we'll be putting them all up on Patreon probably here in the next few days. But I cannot wait to let y'all hear a little bit of it because I'm dying to put it in the intro. I'm dying. Like, the mixes are almost done. This is like this is the last step. This is the step to last, actually, to them being complete. So if y'all want to hear a little bit of it, then I'll play maybe a little, like, 20-second segment of the Star Spangled Banner or the White and Gold. Maybe. So we'll see. But with that, I thank you so much for your support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next super chat here goes to Wubba, also longtime channel legend, just like Gabby. And thank you very much, Wubba, for the $20 support. And thank you very much for that. He said tacos and coffee fund.
And thank you for the support for the tacos and coffee fund. Matthew cooked up, speaking of which, some delicious tacos today that were absolutely bossing. I don't know why I said that like a California Matthew tacos. I said like tacos. And I was like, what the hell? I was like, why did I say it like that?
Yo, bro. Good tacos, yo.
Yo, do you have those tacos, bro? But beyond that, I do have to say, thank you so much for the tacos and coffee fund. Matthew cooked up some bussin' tacos today. They were delicious. And also, I always got to have my Stoke. I got to have my dirt water because it keeps me going and it keeps me up. But beyond that, I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, Wubba, we wouldn't be able to have our coffee and tacos. And also, I see that a lot of people said yes. And also, someone said, well, no, wait for copyright. I'll explain that really quickly. I own the copyrights to the songs already. It's just that it's not officially recognized through the copyright board. But they were works made for hire, just to explain how copyright law works. They were works made for hire. It costs a lot of money to produce songs. Like the Armed Forces medley, to give y'all a ballpark price, was about $5,500 to make 4 minutes and 30 seconds of music. So everything involved in that, it costs over $1,000 per minute of music. The new project was about 5 minutes and 30 seconds long, which is, well, actually it was about 6 minutes long by the time everything was done. The original estimate was 5 minutes and 30 seconds. It was actually 6. So, putting that out there, the cost to produce this music from beginning to finish so far is $7,000. So it's not cheap to make music. Like it's actually like it's eye-watering how much it costs to make this kind of music. And works made for hire are automatically, like, by default, the copyright is owned by the person who commissioned the works. So I'm the one who personally holds the copyrights to those songs. The thing is, though, is that Content ID does not really care, and we have to contest the Content IDs that come through from dawn to dusk once we put them up. We'll have to do that anyways, but the thing is that if I have an actual copyright with a copyright board, I can reference the specific copyright number, because each copyright has a number associated with it, so that way the file can be pulled up and it can be seen that it's an individual copyright owned by me, and, you know, then of course that's something that's actually actionable immediately. But still, I have the copyright to them. So there's not like any sort of like copyright questionability. They're entirely owned by me from beginning to end. It's just that it's a lot easier to battle the content IDs with the actual copyright the copyright office number for that copyright. But beyond that, if y'all want to hear a little snippet, we actually can. Like, we can do that right here. So let me really quickly pull one up. Matthew, what do you think they would want to hear the most? And remember, it's only like the first 20 to 30 seconds of one of the three songs. So what do you think they want to hear? The White and Gold, the Star Spangled Banner, or Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean?
Probably the Star Spangled Banner.
All right, so let me get y'all to that one. All right. So, I hope y'all are ready, because we're going to play it here in just a few seconds. So, hopefully I'm going to get everyone caught up, so y'all are all ready and listening. This is about to begin. So, here we go in 3, 2, 1. And time's up. Sadly, y'all can't hear the rest of it because that was 20 seconds of it. But I hope y'all enjoyed it.
I was waiting for the audio tag, like Audio Jungle or something like that to pop up.
Yeah, man. Honestly, Matthew was like, "Man, that is the best sounding Star Spangled Banner I've ever heard," and it is the best. Like, I'm biased because it cost me a lot of money to make it, but it is the best. like without a doubt, it is the best Star Spangled Banner I've ever heard. Marcos, who is pretty much the composer of this channel at this point, did an amazing job. It was absolutely unbelievable. And of course, Budapest Scoring, which is the orchestra that we used, based out of Budapest in Hungary, or Budapest in Hungary, which is, where's their building? We can actually find it, and it's somewhere around here. Sadly, I don't think I'll be able to find it really quickly right now, but they are the orchestra that I've used for all of our songs. They're an amazing orchestra. And Marcos is an amazing composer. It's incredibly nice. And that, by the way, y'all, is still not the final, mix. We have to do one more round of mix on that, some slight revisions to it and edits to the overall sound levels. But it is an amazing version of the Star Spangled Banner. I played it for Matthew full and through today, and he was like, whoa. And then the White and Gold is also incredibly good, and Columbia, the Gem of the Ocean, turned out amazingly good as well. So I cannot wait to get that out for y'all. If you're wanting to know where can I hear that sooner, I'm not plugging the Patreon, but it is going to be on Patreon, so might as well tell y'all. If y'all want to hear the whole thing from beginning to end, a month before they're going to come out on the channel in the intro and as individual music videos, you will be able to find it on Patreon in a couple of days. I'm going to be putting together the music videos one at a time and putting them out on Patreon probably here over the next week, and then those will be released on YouTube in about a month during LSA week as individual music videos, like we did with the Armed Forces medley, and then they'll also be put in permanently into the intro every single night. So now, at this point, huge thing that I'm really proud of, our entire intro, except for the Bayraktar song, will actually be in-house original LSA music, or Enforcer channel music. So that will be incredibly cool to finally have as our thing, is that our intro is 100% our music and no one else's. So with that, I hope y'all enjoyed that little sneak peek, because I see a lot of y'all were like, wow, that was very nice. It is really nice. I'm so excited to get it out for all of y'all. But anyways, huge thanks to all y'all once again for the kind words, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Tom Exman, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Tom, for that $20 support as well, and helping to keep the channel running. He said, here's to help the taxes on Sunday's Super Chat donations.
Hey, thank you so much for the support. And it's totally fine. That was the first time that we've ever brought that up and really realized after we did all the accounting this year how much that actually costs us in taxes, in money that we actually didn't earn that we're still paying taxes on. But I still thank you so much for the support, and that's totally fine. We were happy to eat the cost on that one time. But I do have to say that from this point forward, sadly, for anyone who's watching the stream right now, we will not be able to accept PayPal, I guess you could say super chats, and then turn them into donations, because the amount of taxes that we pay on that is insanely high. Our tax rate is automatically 30%, even at the lowest bracket, because they added an additional 15% on top because we're self-employed. So if you send in, say, for example, what happened on Sunday, a $300 super chat pretty much on PayPal, and you wanted to go towards the fundraiser, I'm losing $100 on that because I'm putting in all $300 of that, but I still have to pay $100 in taxes on money that I didn't keep. So that's unfortunately how we'll have to work that from here forward. If it doesn't come through on the fundraiser, we just can't accept it. It's just going to be support for the channel at that point, because beyond that, we could, lose our shirts in taxes alone. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And of course, we love to know that people enjoy supporting the fundraisers. It's just that we have to make sure to protect ourselves from having to, lose a lot in paying taxes on money that we don't even have, or really didn't even have at all in the first place. But beyond that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to none other than Duncan VR, the channel legend as well, who puts in a $23 donation. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that support. Excuse me. And Duncan said, Baba Moo, Inshallah. Enforcer, what is the rat mouse saying? Inshallah. Oink, oink. Enforcer did a good donkey noise. Baba. Now it's Matt's turn. Oh man, I'm telling you, the fly hot dog is applying to do Pizza Hut ads. Oh, woof, woof, meow.
Oh man, but still, thank you so much for the support. And what is the rat mouse saying? Angela! We shall defend our nuclear reactors, Angela! From the Avenue, they will end up like a bush! Well, actually, he ended up on a ranch and he's not doing that bad. But we shall defend ourselves incredibly, Angela! But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and the traditional animal noises. Can a stream be a stream in this channel without the animal noises? The answer is no. Like, if there are no animal noises, it wasn't a normal stream. And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Duncan VR, and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we just wouldn't be able to be here. We wouldn't be able to keep the thing running. And so, a huge thank you so much once again for support, and I hope that does address that incredibly well. Because, what are the charges? Eating a meal? A succulent Iranian meal? How dare you, sir? Get your hands off my depleted uranium. And you, sir, are you ready to receive my depleted uranium? How dare you, sir? But beyond that, I do thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Eric Horner LSA, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Eric, for that $20 support. And I'm just double checking real quick, but I believe YouTube said that might have been your first one. And let me double check. I'm going back up and checking. Let me check. I'm checking right now. Let's see here. It's a long ways up. Let's see here. Where is it? What the hell? Where'd it go? Let's see here. It is his first ever Super Channel live stream. It took me a long time to get up there, but thank you very much, Eric, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And he said, I appreciate both you guys and what you do for Ukraine in this channel. And thank you, Eric. He said, the LSA community is the best out there by far. And here's the pizza fun, and take one from the chat in LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the first time support, Eric. And thank you for the kind words. We love to hear them. We love to hear them. And I got to say, thank you so much greatly for the support of the pizza fun. Me personally, I want another Chicago-style pizza someday. Imagine gonna be like, oh, no. I liked it. It was like a giant hunk of cheese on bread. And I was like, hey, that's not bad. But beyond that, I do thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you who put in their first time support, where would we be? Well, we wouldn't be right here, that's for sure. Because I tell you, groceries are expensive these days. Fast food's expensive. Eating is expensive. Living is expensive. And if it wasn't for all of y'all supporting this channel and helping us to keep it running, we wouldn't be able to pay those bills, to be able to make this our full-time job. And so, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And before we move on to the next one, please, folks, be civil. I've seen people in the chat going, you have injured me rightly, and I demand recompense. And I don't know what's going on down there. I really don't. I only have seen a brief moment of it. But please, folks, come on. Be civil. We got no room for this bloodshed. We're all Westerners at the end of the day, or Americans at a minimum. And there's no reason to be getting into blows and conversations over things that won't matter. Because you know something, time is a-fleeting, folks. One day, we're all going to be pushing up lilies. One day. And the little arguments that you feel like you've won right now, and the feelings that you hurt today, are going to be inconsequential tomorrow. Just remember that, everyone. We're all just chit-chatting here. It's business. That's what it is. You don't have to be getting angry with each other and throwing around the allegations and the accusations. It's just not going to end up well. It's not going to end up well for anyone. So come on, folks. Let's just be a little reasonable here.
And also, folks, remember, like the enforcer said, it's not worth it. Like the political discussions, even if you're talking about politicians or fellow like citizens or whoever, it's not worth it to start like wishing harm on people and stuff like that over like differences of opinion. Because I've seen that occasionally. I see in the chat we have to put a stop to that quickly. But also, people generally just like want to devolve into basically threatening each other and doing like and saying hard things about each other. It's like just it's politics, it's whatever. It doesn't need to go down to the level of that. It's just like if you disagree with somebody, understand that if they're not wanting to change their mind, that's just the end of it. And you just got to realize it's their opinion, they hold it, and that's the way it is, and you just got to move on.
I mean, yeah, come on, let's all be reasonable here. No reason really though to be getting on each other though and beating each other down because like we said a couple of days ago, and I'm gonna stay by this one. I'll die on this hill. These folks that y'all are going to bat for, and I've seen some of y'all trying to go for bat for one person or the other in the chat. I can promise y'all this: whether you like the guy or hate him, or whether you like someone else or hate him, they don't care about y'all. Like, they don't care about me. Like, they don't care about any of us because we're just these little nameless people wandering around in the world. No reason to go out there to go to bat and get beat down or beat other people down for them. And at the end of the day, politics is just business. If someone likes your guy, they like him. If they don't, they don't. And also on top of that, I don't even know why anyone's talking about that here because by the rules, no one's supposed to be talking about politics. But be civil, folks. Be civil. The Chinese and the Russians, they get big smiles on their faces when folks are not having or having very heated or violent political discussions. Every time that happens, there's a Russian FSB agent or a member of the Chinese Special Support Forces that's getting a big grin on their face because they've been able to make a couple of Americans go at it again. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, and hopefully that calms down the tensions a little bit. Let's not flame the fires here, everyone. Let's not flame the fires. But anyways, it's time for us to move on to the next one. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the next one goes to Just Chillin', who's also a longtime channel legend, and puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Just Chillin', for that support and helping to keep us running. And they said that donkey lives matter.
Donkey lives do matter. They're sweet little creatures. They're stubborn, very stubborn sometimes. But just look at this creature and tell me that it's not cute.
Not the most like endearing sound in the world, but you can live with it.
It's man, but they're cute though. Look at that, little cute little donkey.
Oh, I like them. I do like them.
They are cute. This one though, not the cutest, but let's see. This one, very cute. Would pet it. I think it's very cute. This one, kind of cute. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know. This one, classic. You just can't beat it. Like, that is the classic. This one, very cute as well. Would pet, really cute. Like them. You know, they count. And the Russians are just throwing them out there like cannon fodder. It's ridiculous, really. I don't like that at all, really. I don't really like the idea. Like, I'll be honest. I don't really like the idea of animals being in war these days. Like bomb sniffing dogs like Patron, that made sense because they're behind the lines out of danger, but putting animals in danger these days in the middle of wars, especially considering how mechanized warfare has gotten these days, doesn't really make any sense at that point. Like, if you've gotten down to that point logistically where you're having to go back to pack animals, you may as well have already just given up at that point, because if the other side's still mechanized, you're not standing a chance. And not only that, you're putting animals in harm's way. And I'm not like I'll be completely frank, I have respect for the natural environment, but I'm not a tree hugger either. But I don't like the idea of putting innocent animals in harm's way in conflicts like this when they really aren't going to amount to a hill of beans of difference in the first place, whether they're there or not. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Steve T, who put in a very generous $20 donation, and thank you, Steve, as well, for supporting the channel. And Steve says, how much longer do you think it'll take Ukraine to recover, rebuild, rearm post-war while giving 50% of its resources to the USA? And is the USA trying to keep Ukraine weak and out of NATO for Putin?
I don't think so. The current deal actually sounds like it would benefit Ukraine a good deal. Like, I'll be actually honest, like, it did a 180, and I know a lot of people might be, like, dead set on thinking that that cannot happen. It sounds like it did, so we have to work with what we heard. But it sounds as though the Ukrainians probably will be in the process of rebuilding, like any other country, for maybe 10 to 20 years post-war, and they'll probably see a substantial amount of economic growth during that time. Because even if U.S. companies are in Ukraine, this is something that a lot of people aren't thinking. Even if a U.S. company is the one extracting the rare metals from Ukraine, Americans are not going to be working in Ukraine. It's not going to be an entirely closed off sort of a system. They're going to be hiring Ukrainians to work for these American companies. They're going to be getting paid by these companies. That means these Ukrainians will have jobs. That also means that these companies will have to be buying some sort of resources, most likely inside of the Ukrainian economy, to be able to run their operations inside of Ukraine. So there will be money to be made for Ukraine on this, even if an American company is the one conducting the resource extractions. So the Ukrainians will benefit from that in the end. Not only that, but with how the current arrangement is now set up from what we've heard, it sounds as though a lot of the profits that will be generated, at least during the conflict from the resource extractions, will be put into some sort of a fund pool that will be accessed at the end of the war that will be used to rebuild Ukraine from the ground up wherever it's needed. So say in a city, for example, like Pokrovsk or Chasiv Yar, or any other city that's been devastated to ashes, like Vovchansk, that money will go into rebuilding those cities and resettling them, and also rebuilding the industries that existed in those areas. So I think that we actually will be seeing that this will be fairly beneficial for Ukraine, but like any other country that goes through a war, it'll probably take 10 years for them to actually completely recover from the scourge of war, because it's not an incredibly easy and fast process. It usually takes a little bit of time, usually longer than the war itself. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Jopar024, who put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jopar, for that $20 support. And they said, I appreciate calling the objective reality of situations out in the interest of the United States, even if it results in various people calling you out for politics. And at some point in time, objective reality meets subjective opinion.
And I thank you so much for the support, and that's a pretty succinct way of putting it. This channel just runs on analysis, and I think you really get that more so than some people do. But most people get on this channel that we work entirely on analysis alone, and we're not working on just raw opinions or feelings. And that's something that really annoys me, is that people say, I don't work on feelings, I work on facts. And then most everyone who says that works on feelings more so than facts. We work on facts on this channel. Like, I'll be honest with y'all, I have my own feelings about the prior president and the first president. To be entirely honest with y'all, I don't really like either of them. Like, really, to be entirely honest with y'all. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit there and let that cloud my judgment on what's good and what's bad. Like, everyone that we've dealt with on YouTube, I have good feelings about some of them, bad feelings about others. But when I look at their standing in YouTube and whether they're doing well or not, I don't really let that guide my bias into saying they're doing badly or well. Sometimes we look at them and we're like, wow, that guy that we don't like is actually doing well, and this other guy that we like isn't doing that well, and this guy that we don't like isn't doing well. And it's really different on a case-to-case basis, because if you live outside of reality, where your feelings guide your understanding of the world, you're going to be living outside of reality. And that's what a lot of people do nowadays, is that they come up with a fictitious reality to live in based on their feelings or how they want to understand the world, instead of really trying to get a realistic and gritty kind of a understanding of what the world actually is around them. And that's what we try and do on this channel. So when the new president came in, it sounded good. We said it looked good. He also brought forward the mineral deal, but with completely different terms than we saw just a few days ago and today. And under those terms that he originally had laid out, we originally assessed it and said, it sounds great, and it looks great, and it looks like things are going up and up. Then the whole aspect changed, and he did a 180, and then we said this was a raw deal, and I do not agree with what he's doing in this aspect at all. It's a terrible idea for U.S. and Western interest. And now he's completely changed the deal and its terms again today, and now the Ukrainians are actually agreeing with it. And then going off of this, it sounds good, and it sounds like it's within the benefits of the United States and Ukraine. And if it's signed that way, and it's the exact way that we're hearing it right now, I can't say that it was a bad deal. It was a good deal. But if it changes again in between now and Friday, when Zelensky's supposed to sign this deal, I'm going to go right back to what we were saying originally, which is that it's a raw deal and one that Ukraine shouldn't agree to. Because, like, my analysis, once again, doesn't rely on you being a liberal or a conservative and liking or disliking someone because they're not with your party or they're with your party. If your party guy does a good action, I'll say it's good. If he doesn't do a good action, I'll say it's bad. That's just how the shots are called on this channel. I don't put any bias into it at all. As far as our foreign policy analysis is concerned, there's certain kinds of things that are beneficial or important for this country and an exact way to do it, and if it's not being done that exact way or being done aggressively enough in America or the West's interest, it's not a good call. If it is being done meeting those parameters, then it's a good action and it's within America and the West's interest, and we'll say that was a pretty good move. But that's how we always do it, and I got to thank you for appreciating that and supporting it, because some people don't get that. Like some people on this channel have an inherent bias and a sway, and they don't really want to say it, but when I bash the guy that they don't like, they agree with it, but then when I bash their person, then they don't like it. Or if I say that the person that's currently in charge has done something good and they don't like the guy, then they want to bash me and say that I'm getting political. And a lot of people try and weaponize the rule that at the end of the day, I don't think they understand. I made the rule, so I'm the one to know if it's political or not, because I've been the arbiter for 3 years on the channel of what's political and what isn't. I'll know what's political or not. So I always make sure that everything that I say falls within the no politics rule. Very rarely has that ever not been the case, and I will say that sometimes I feel like I've stepped over that line a little bit, but usually towards like the last 30 minutes of the show. Like that's usually when that happens. But I always try.
Honestly though, a safe bet, like just speaking generally, me personally, I generally root for whoever is currently in charge of the country. Like that's just the way I do it. Even if I didn't want the person, or I don't like the person, or I like the person, I just generally root for them to do good, because when they do good, generally everybody in the country most of the time does good. So you can't go wrong, at least playing it that way. Now, of course, if they do something stupid, feel free to use freedom of speech and say what you want about it. Not here on the channel, obviously, because we don't get into politics, but elsewhere, feel free to go right ahead. But ultimately, though, we shouldn't be wishing, failure or, bad things on whoever it is that's running it, because of course they're the ones steering the ship that we're on. We're all on the ship. So we don't want to, go down that route. So, that's not productive as an American.
Yeah, and also the reminder, if the ship sinks, you're going down with it and you're dying with it. There's no lifeboats on this one. If the ship sinks, you're dying with it. So, probably best not to be wishing for bad things to happen because the guy you don't like's in charge, because bad things are going to be happening to you. Like you're not detached. You're not some third party going, look at that bastard. I hope that he runs the country into the ground, because if the country runs into the ground, you're going with it. And that's something that I saw in the last administration by a totally different group of people. And now that the current administration's in, now it's being done by the last group of people. And it's just always crazy to me how tribalistic that is, because it's like, if it goes down, everyone's going down. It's like if the city falls, you fall with it, kind of a deal. It's not a good thing to really root for the decline of the country because your party isn't in charge, because if it goes down, you're going down with it. That's the basic thing that it boils down to. And that's something that always gets me. So whenever I look at things, I look at it as I'm still on the ship, and if it sinks, I'm dying. So let's look at it more pragmatically and neutrally, and if it's a good action, it's a good action. If it isn't, it isn't. And on top of that, another thing I have to say is that politics is a really, really seasonal thing. It really only matters when elections are coming around. That's like my opinion on it. And I know a lot of people want to make it their life and, be into the whole identity politics thing. But elections really do only matter when, politics really only matters when election comes around. Because, like, right now, like, let's talk about just the president alone, not the Congress or anything. Let's just talk about the president. The president has been elected, and he is going to be the president for the next 4 years, much like the last one was. So what is really the point of making it clear that you hate or love the current president, considering it has no impact on anything? Because whether you love him or hate him greatly right now, it's not going to be removing him or keeping him in office. He's going to be there anyways. That's kind of like my aspect on it. Like when election cycles come around, yeah, then it's the time to, start talking about it. Of course, not on this channel, and we wouldn't talk about it on the channel anyways. But for all of y'all, then it really is time to start talking about it, because it's coming around time to pick the president of the United States again. So then everyone's got to try and figure out what way they lean and who to vote for. But, that's just really, that's really the way I roll. It's like, what's the point of talking about it now? The deed's done, the president's the president, and we'll come around in about 2 years' time to start talking about it again, and then figure out which one the next one will be. So, that's my take on it. So that's like the way I go about it. It sounds very laissez-faire, but it really is the way it runs, and that's why politics used to be so easy to follow and talk about, say 30 or 40 years ago, is because everyone always acted like, well, everyone didn't always act like all year round, all the time, that it was a life or death hanging in the balance sort of a deal with politics, when honestly it's just people yapping like it always has been, and everyone yapping isn't even changing anything. So with that, I hope that does also, BDS Man said, you have a strange definition of politics. No, I don't, because foreign policy is just totally detached from domestic politics. Like, foreign policy is diplomacy, and people mix diplomacy and politics to be one and the same. Diplomacy is totally different than politics, as far as the domestic political situation is concerned. Your opinions on domestic political matters, like gun control and abortion, have no impact on our foreign policy standing with Ukraine or other countries around the world. There's no way to even make them sound like they're connected to each other. Like, doing that is just trying to confuse everything and make it really complicated, and then somehow turn foreign policy into a partisan issue, which it's not a partisan issue. Almost, there's really only one way it can go beneficially, and that's it. Like, that's largely why you'll see that while domestic political stances can change from president to president and from Congress to Congress, the foreign policy standing really doesn't change much from president to president, because there's really only one way to play that game. So, that's why, like, we don't get into the domestic political thing, because as far as diplomacy and politics is concerned, or foreign policy and domestic politics is concerned, they're pretty much two entirely separate tracks. They don't even really intersect with each other too much, and one decision in one camp doesn't really affect the other one much at all. So anyways, I hope that kind of addresses that well. Maybe that makes sense. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Flash1, who's also a channel legend and puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Flash, for the support and also helping to keep us running. And Flash said, hey, Enforcers, and have you ever thought of doing a recap of the war, like turret tosses, large explosions, etc.? And LSA, live chat question, please, and great show, Enforcers.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support. And that is a cool idea, but I want to put out to you the voluminous undertaking that would be. We have made, at this point, around 3,600 hours of streams. And so to be able to recap 3,600 hours of stuff, I kind of have to go through and recap 3,600 hours of my life all over again. And that would be a little bit problematic, because I don't really have that kind of free time for anything at all right now, much less 3,600 hours to be able to go back and do a whole recap like that. Like, I could generally go back and memorize, like, the big sweeping actions of the conflict, major offenses, battles, things like that, but going through and getting, like, the big explosions and the cool clips, that would be really hard at this point, because I actually have to go through dozens of maps. Like, let me show you how many maps have been made since day one of the war. These are all the maps that I've ever made, which they restart weekly since day one of the war. It's an insane thing, like, the amount of maps. I'd have to go through all of them and look at all of the clips. Some of them are around, some of them have been deleted, so some of the markers lead to nothing at this point. Or I'd have to go through all of my shows. And it would be really hard to do that. Like, I think it would be cool, and we do have LSA historians that really kind of keep track of, like, the big events on streams, the jokes, the cool clips, stuff like that. But for me to personally do it, it probably would be too big of an undertaking, just because of how long we've been at this. We've been at this for nearly 1,100 days. But it still would be a cool idea. Sadly, though, I think we'd be limited by time constraints. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, now actually we need to get a live chat question for Flash1, and Flash's live chat question is going to go to, let's see here, AF Plan, who said, any word of armed resistance taking place in other parts of Iran besides Charabad?
We haven't heard about anything happening outside of Charizard. Like, it appears that everything is localized within that town. I know I said Charizard. I did that deliberately. It sounds like it. Chabahar does. But beyond that, I haven't heard about any other rebellions happening inside of Iran, so it appears that it's largely focalized, at least according to our information, within the town of Chabahar itself. So I hope that does address that live chat well, and I hope that also kind of explains why earlier in the stream I was saying it's very localized and probably will not spread, because it seems to be a very local phenomenon within Chabahar. But still, I hope that does address that live chat well. Thank you once again, Flash One, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel keep on running, as I did a very interesting voice crack. I did like a Wolf Blitzer kind of voice crack where he's like, "We are live." Like, but anyways, we are on to the next one.
And moving on to our next one, this one goes to Brendan West, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Brendan, for the support and choosing to support the channel. And we appreciate it very much. And Brendan says, I heard that the president said the president of Ukraine will be coming to the United States on Friday. And do you know anything about that?
Yes, I do. That's actually when they're supposed to be signing the mineral deal. And once again, right now with the terms laid out, the Ukrainians have accepted the deal. So it sounds as though the deal is fair. And also, like, I got to put this out there because some people are still saying that it was under duress. There really was no duress with the deal agreement as of right now, because Macron has made it very clear that Europe could go its own way, and Europe could continue to finance and support Ukraine on its own if necessary, although it would be a significant expense, they can do it. So with that in mind, Ukraine was under no duress at this point, beyond the Starlink system, which can also be overcome by just switching over to fiber optic cable drones instead of wirelessly operated drones. The Ukraine has really been under no duress at this point with how the foreign policy situation evolved after those statements were made. So the Ukrainians are accepting this deal on their own accord at this point because Europe has the leverage to be able to support Ukraine, and Ukraine has the leverage to be able to accept European support alone and continue on without the United States. So they are accepting the deal because it actually is favorable to them and the terms are amenable. So I hope that addresses that fairly well on that end, but that's also why Zelensky is coming here on Friday, is because he's coming to the United States to sign this agreement in person. He's most likely going to have a diplomatic envoy with him to read over the terms with him and also send that back to Kyiv so that way they can make sure to confirm that the terms are acceptable and appear to be legal and something that Ukraine can make actionable, as well as the United States. But that's what he's going to be arriving for on Friday. He's also going to most likely, once again, address the U.S. Congress, which seems to almost be an annual tradition at this point, and he'll also most likely have some closed-door talks with the president. So I hope that does address that well, at least from what we know right now, but that's everything I know about what's coming up on Friday. But a huge thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to another channel legend. It's Adam McLean, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Adam, as well, for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And he said, this channel never lets me down.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Adam McLean. And we hope that the channel doesn't let you down. We hope that the channel never lets anyone down. And I got to thank everyone for really enjoying it tonight, because there's been a mess of people who've been here tonight watching the stream. And we're always incredibly honored to know that so many people watch it. Like, hell, it's crazy to think that tonight we got up to 10.1 thousand live viewers. Again.
For real?
Yeah, we got it. That was the peak. It was 10.1.
Damn. I thought it was like 9 or something like that. That's crazy. I got up high tonight.
Oh, no, it was 10.1. And that's crazy because like 9 people got together on the Hot Dog Man show like yesterday, and they only brought in like 800. So we like outdid them by like 1,300%. I was like, wow. I was like, okay.
Yeah, man, they brought in, what was it, like 9 different channels? Now, granted, they weren't massive channels or anything like that, but 9 different channels, and they could only bring in like what was it? 800 viewers or something?
It was like 890 or something like that. So.
I think it ended up being like 9,000 views or something for the entire stream. But, you know, for bringing in that many channels, you think the viewership would be higher.
Whoa. They brought in 10% of the viewership that we bring in on a normal day. But that was wild to see. Like, it really is wild to see how many people enjoy the show on a day-to-day basis. Because no live show in this category does as well as this one on a daily basis. I don't think there's a single one that I know of. So it's really crazy to see that that's the case. It was even crazier to see that Hot Dog Man was like clinging at straws. It was even crazier to see that Hot Dog Man and Pissing Contest got together after they cussed each other out publicly for like a whole year. Like, I was like, well, that's weird. Like, that's very awkward, I would suppose. But, you know, I'm not one to judge. We don't deal with that group. But beyond that, That was wild to see. And what's even crazier, man, is that they got up to like a peak viewership of 890 people, which when you think about it, 9 YouTubers put together, some of them you would believe are of significant size, you would think that they would be able to bring in a larger audience than that. But with just 8.9 thousand viewers, we would be outdoing their live viewership by 1,000%. So tonight we outdid them by like 1,300%, I believe, by the numbers. And that's just wild because really it's a normal night like any night on the show with the amount of people we have here. But still, I get to thank you so much for the support and the kind words and enjoying this channel because you're one of many, but we really do cherish the position and spot we're in to be pretty much the leading voice in the news in this category as far as live shows are concerned. And we really have been ever since the first days of the war. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Nobody, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Nobody, for that $20 support and helping to keep us running. And they said, just caught the stream, and when do I get my quote-unquote, you were right validation, boys? I told you how the deal investment arms changeover would go, but you said, nope, that's not going to happen. Ha, ha, ha. By the way, look for the news soon about Iraq. And also, I remember vaguely saying something about that Nobody. I'll be honest with you, like, I think we flip-flopped ourselves a lot of times on what we predicted was going to be the case. I think our original prediction, which we originally said might end up coming true, maybe. But even at that, I'm not very confident with that because right now the flip-flopping is quite extreme. So it's hard to keep up with it. So you might turn out to be correct, actually. There's no telling. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm going to have to withhold the you're right for now. Like, you might end up being right. But once again, it's flip-flopping. It may actually go with our original assertion that we've been making for almost a year at this point, which would be crazy and honestly a miracle if it did. But it also may go a complete 180, which you would be right in. So for now, we're going to wait. I'm largely going to wait to give you that you're right until Friday. Well, after Friday, because after Friday happens, we'll see what goes on then. And if it goes the way we thought it would, that is going to be amazing. If it doesn't, then you're right. So with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I don't know why we want to look at southern Iraq. There's not really a lot down there. It's pretty much just endless desert of nothingness, really. Like, there's literally nothing out here in the desert, except for this small little town right here. That's it. So I don't really know what would be going on in southern Iraq because there really isn't anyone living in southern Iraq. But still, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Joe's RV Home Turtle, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Joe's RV Home Turtle, for the support once again. And he said, coffee fund.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support to the coffee fund. And thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to have that coffee. And geez Louise, Matthew doesn't like Stoke with milk. He says it tastes like chalk. But crazy, because he's honestly true. Honestly, Stoke doesn't taste that good, no matter how you try to dress it up. But beyond that, I thank you so much once again for support and supporting the coffee fund. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to X, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, X, for the $20 support as well. They said, as an American, I'm glad that the U.S. and Ukraine are economic partners with the rare earth minerals deals. And if we got to fight the Russians to protect our money, then it is what it is. And America first is now Ukraine first. And I'll say this. You know what? I did hear today. I'm not sure if it's going to hold up once again, so take it with a grain of salt. But the word on the street is, if we have an economic interest in Ukraine for getting the minerals, then we would have a defensive reason for providing more aid to Ukraine, which would make sense. But I'm not sure if it's going to work out that way in practice. But it is a good thought. So hopefully it does go that way. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would largely have to say I hope it goes a good way as well with the security assurances and guarantees. But the thing is that people don't get this. Like, when people say America first, putting America first doesn't always mean that we have to be selfishly self-centered with what we're doing. Like, the action doesn't have to be selfish for it to be putting America first and foremost. And that's something that I think people don't get. Putting the United States first in our own decision-making processes sometimes means we have to help out other people. Like, for example, when a business says, we have to put our shareholders first, that doesn't always mean that has to become at the expense of their employees and the consumers. Sometimes that means that they have to be more amenable to their consumers or their employees to either attract better employees or to attract a larger consumer base. Like, every time someone says we have to put ourselves first, that doesn't mean that you have to screw other people over or be extremely selfish to end up securing your best interests. That largely is the best way to ensure that your interests come last, or that you really do not achieve what you're looking for. Like, think about it. Let's talk about this in a better perspective, because I believe that feudalist societies are the best way to see this. So back in the day, something that a lot of people don't know is that kings did not rule absolutely hardly ever. That was something that happened in like the 16th and 17th centuries, never really happened before that in the rest of the medieval era. Kings ruled through a coalition of lords that pretty much did the bidding of the king as long as they were in his favor. So there was a lot of politics, an internal politic structure that went on in most medieval kingdoms. So let's take Britain, for example, or England, the Kingdom of England, which would include Wales for the large part most of the time. But anyways, let's just take the Kingdom of England. So the Kingdom of England would have a king or a queen. And then there would be the loads of lords. The king doesn't actually hold all of the power. The king has a lot of power, but doesn't hold most of the power. Half of it would be controlled by this giant confederation of lords. So for the king to get ahead, he couldn't just sit there and say, the king first, screw the lords, because you know what would happen is that the lords would rise up in a revolt and then end up going to war with the king. And usually the kings would end up losing those kinds of wars. So the best way for the king to secure his own interests would be to go out and make sure to entice the lords to follow along with what he wants, which would be in his best interest, by giving them some sorts of assurances or securities. That is the way you lead, because there's no such thing as anyone ever really ruling absolutely. That very rarely ever occurs, and when it does, it usually doesn't last long, or it only lasts as long as that leader that's ruling absolutely does. Usually it falls apart after that. You have to be out there making sure to try and entice people to go along with your way, because then that means that you're going to be benefiting the most. And in the end, in the actual end product that you produce from those actions, you're actually putting yourself first by making those kinds of decisions. That's why when I see people saying, we can't afford to do this and that around the world, we might as well give up and just, focus on the United States and everything internally, it doesn't really make that much sense, because that's not really putting us first. That's really giving up everything for this illusion that we're putting ourselves first through selfish actions that may produce incredibly nasty results as a consequence. And largely, to just be entirely honest with you, isolationism always ends out poorly. Like, there's never a single example where anyone did well under isolationism. Like Japan, for example. Japan went into isolationism in the 1600s, came out of it in the 1850s, and they were still living like a feudal society in the 1800s by the time the U.S. forced them to open up to the world to trade. That didn't serve them well at all. Technologically and quality of life wise, they stagnated for 200 years. For example, fascist Spain under Francisco Franco, they went isolationist, much like the Germans wanted to under Hitler, in an autarky economic model, and it did them abysmally. Spain went into a depression that lasted the entire time Francisco Franco was in power. It did not end up boding Spain well at all. Germany, under the autarky principle, which is where Germany said that they would be entirely economically self-sufficient, and they would either get the resources from inside of German lands or German-occupied lands, or they wouldn't get them at all, was one of the big reasons why Germany was not able to economically compete throughout the war, and a large reason why their war machine would end up dying or largely fizzling out really by mid and late 1943. It's just not a good thing to be an isolationist country. It just doesn't end up producing anything of real worth or value. And also, on top of that, like, if you look at that or apply an isolationist kind of a mindset or a selfishly centered kind of a mindset to any kind of a practice of business, it always ends up poorly. A business cannot succeed without having customers. A business cannot succeed without having good reputations. A person can't succeed in the world without having to be sociable with some people or make arrangements or concessions or assurances with other people. That's just how the world works. I'm sure many of y'all would know that. I mean, like many people who say, who go along America first kind of a mindset that's being propagated today. And I have nothing wrong with putting the United States first. As an American, I believe that American interest should be first and foremost of the mind of a U.S. citizen, for we are Americans. So it's inherently within our interest to make sure that the nation is prosperous and succeeds. But that doesn't mean that our actions have to always be selfishly focused, because we don't really achieve much doing that. So, like, for example, let's go to a more personal kind of an example of this. Let's say, it's for some people who may believe in this kind of a concept, I'm sure some of y'all own businesses and are successful in your trades. Would you succeed if you always put your interest ahead of the customers, or made it always look like that was the case? Like if you never gave your customers a discount, or you never told your customers that they mattered, and you always made it sound like they didn't really matter and they didn't really care, because at the end of the day, as long as your brick and mortar store had the lights on, that's all that counted. Screw you. You're probably not going to be in business that long. Or better yet, if you have to go and make business deals with another company, like for example, to get raw materials to be able to produce your goods in your business, and you continue to put them at a massive disadvantage and just try and screw them, or make it very clear that you don't need them, you might not be able to make the business deal you need to be able to succeed as a company. Those kinds of concepts, or those kinds of ideas, when put into practice on any level, the international stage, or even the personal level of running a private business, it doesn't bode well. Like another example is here with our channel, like to explain this. Would this channel succeed if we told everyone who came in contact with it that they sucked and they were stupid and we didn't need them around? That wouldn't work. That wouldn't work for this channel. People wouldn't want to be here, because why the hell would anyone want to enjoy a channel or watch it where someone was bad-mouthing them all the time? That's how it always works on every level. And also on top of that, I really do enjoy most of the channel. There's always like a goofball that comes in here and there who'll say something goofy, and then I like go at him. But I really do enjoy running this channel a great deal. But if I didn't, and then I acted always selfishly for the self-interest of the channel, we'd be like Hot Dog Man, and Hot Dog Man's channel is failing. So I hope that those are some good examples as to why that doesn't really work as a concept. I get where you're coming from with that, but that would start to put America's interests to the wayside, really, and what would be most beneficial for us, instead of what would actually be a beneficial end product and result for the United States. But still, I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I was just told by Matthew we have 40 super chats left. Tonight's been a busy night, like way busier than I thought. But with that, I hope that has addressed it well. Thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Danny B, who is a Chef Danny B, what's in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Danny, for supporting the channel yet again, and we appreciate it very much. And Danny says, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. So I worked all day and didn't eat anything, so I stopped at Burger King on the way home, and I don't eat a lot of fast food, but for 4 burgers and 2 medium fries, almost $40, and LSA. And it's expensive, Danny. The food and everything has gotten crazy expensive, I must say, these days. And it's just insane what the prices are. And that sounds like, honestly, that's on the smaller end, actually, because if you go to Five Guys, it's even more than that. But thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I have to thank you for the support, Danny B. And the prices are getting insane these days. That's pretty much what we pay whenever we go through fast food. We were to cut the order down to just be for Matthew and me. That's pretty much what we're paying these days in prices in Alabama. And it's crazy. Oh, that's really why I've been, kind of spearheading the whole thing of, we got to look out for ourselves. You can't really count on these people in Washington, these mythical, magical people, to really help out. We got to be able to count on ourselves and come up with a solution that actually would work. And one of the quickest ways, and sadly, I feel like I'm on the timer now because we have so many super chats left. If I give a minute to each one, we still will round out overtime. But beyond that, to talk about this really quickly, the easiest way to fix that is 2 things. One, you issue an order to the U.S. Department of Agriculture to pretty much start cutting checks for farmers to destroy crops or not plant crops. So that way the crops are cheaper, and the crops would end up being cheaper because there's going to be a higher supply of them and the equal amount of demand we have currently. And also another thing that's being completely overlooked in the country these days is the transportation infrastructure, which is hanging on by a thread. Not because we have a terrible transportation structure. It's actually one of the best fleshed out ones in the world. The problem is that we don't have people who are incentivized to work in the transport sector anymore. Pay for truck drivers is terrible. Pay for railway engineers, conductors, and everyone else in the railroad industry is not that great. And airline pilots are struggling to get by for the most part. Even if they're incentivized to become an airline pilot, you have to jump through a million hoops to then get into a job where you're pretty much paying off the debt of going to flight school. We have to be able to try and make it to where people are incentivized to work in these industries, so that way the cost of transport is lower, and that will generally produce a cheaper cost, because the actual food itself will be cheaper and the cost of transport would be cheaper. That's actually one of the best ways that we can start to chip away at the kind of massive prices that we're starting to see in the food sector. And of course, that there's still an underlying inflation that's going to be raising the costs on that, but at least we will be able to stymie the overall cost, or greatly slow the rising costs in food that's starting to plague the country these days in a very horrendous way. So I hope that does address that well. That's, if I was the president of the United States, those would be the two major initiatives I would be going on. Largely the crusades I'd be trying to work on to try and lower the cost of food, and also try and see if we can start to lower the costs in other categories as well. Because of course, housing is also another one that's outrageous these days. If we could fix the cost of food products, groceries, and also housing, we would be able to start chipping away at some of the major costs that impact most average American citizens in this nation. And one of the things that should be of gravest concern domestically to the U.S. federal government and also state governments at this point, in my opinion. But still, a huge thanks to you so much for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Cliff H, who puts in a $13 donation, and thank you, Cliff, as well, for that support. He said, I am proud to be a simple thread in the LSA tapestry of greatness. And one from the chat, please.
Hey, and that's a really cool way of putting it, actually, because the LSA is a giant tapestry of people. I wish I could play a little bit of the white and gold for y'all right now, but we are running out of time, sadly. But with that, it is time for us to get to that live chat question that you have sponsored. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Valsur Caetano Lille from the live chat, who said, do you think that the Macron talk changed the U.S. position?
I think it probably did, because Macron holds a great deal of heft and power over Europe at this point and can kind of shape its direction. So a talk with Macron, in between the President of the United States and Macron, probably did have a lot of impact on the U.S. position that we heard did a massive 180 today. So with that, I hope that does address that at least the best I can. And thank you once again for sponsoring the live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
He did the croissant trick. He said, oh, no more croissant. Oh, no more. He said, we need some more croissants. But anyways, moving on here to our next super chat. This one goes to Snowy, who puts in an $11 donation. And thank you very much, Snowy, for that $11 support. And they said, you said the world is nasty. And in retrospect, would the world have been better if the current, let's see, this one, we can't read this one right here. Like this one right here. First of all, I don't support any statements like wishing harm on anybody, by the way. I'm not sure if that's what this statement was intended to say. But the president is our president. So, I don't wish harm on anybody. So I don't know what that's about. But Enforcer, what say you?
Let's see, which one is that, Matthew? Let me read it really quick.
Snowy.
Yeah, we're not going to address that one. We never wish harm or death onto anyone. So I thank you for the support, but I largely have to condemn the statement. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Jopar024, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you, Jopar, for that $10 support. And he said, thank you, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt.
Hey, and thank you so much for the kind words and the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Takeshi Mitsuchi, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Takeshi, for that support. They said, because of this awesome channel and super awesome people, and we love everybody, and slava Ukraine.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the kind words. And the Lee Spring Army is truly an amazing group of folks. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Not For One Yet For All Ukraine, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Not For One Yet For All Ukraine, for that support. They said, Ba Muba, LOL. And hello there, and this is the way. 3 years later, still wearing different support for Ukraine shirts every day. And if y'all are in the USA, y'all should too. And slow Ukraine.
Hey, and Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we always support of Western and American interests to Ukraine and others. And I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Scott Kemp, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Scott, for the support as well. And let's see here. He said, do you think the current U.S. is pro-Ukraine or not?
It's really hard to say. I would say with the current mineral agreement that we heard today, it sounds as though we're heading right back to being pro-Ukrainian. But over the past week or so, before today, I would say that the U.S. position was pretty much almost anti-Ukrainian, almost pro-Russian at that point. But it's changing so much, it's really hard to say. I honestly want to kind of withhold statements on that until after Friday, so that way we can really see what happens, because Friday is going to be a pretty big determinant in what the actual direction of the United States is. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Not For One, Yet For All Ukraine, once again, who puts in a second support, and this one is a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Not For One, for that support. They said, I'm with Mr. Andrew about protesting. My protest point is to wear a shirt that everybody sees in your daily life instead of marching and facing off with the cops. And just my opinion. But LLT, LSA, and Marmot.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support, and long live the Spring Army. And I generally don't ever wear any kind of clothes that have slogans on them. I'll just be honest. The only one I ever wear is just the LSA shirts, because that's kind of our thing, so I rep the set on that one. But with other ones, I just generally don't wear them because, like, if people agree with you, they're probably not even going to, like, look at the shirt. And then, people who disagree with you, they're going to try and pick you out to get into an argument or possibly a fight. And I'm like, like, when I get out, I'm not really for that kind of a thing. It's like when I'm getting out, I'm trying to relax. So it's like I don't really want to get into it with anyone. Because it's like, if they don't like Ukraine, they don't like it. It's like, I'm off the clock. I'm not here to convince them at this point. Honestly, that's kind of how I look at it. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, AMX10, for the support. If I can speak, I can speak. But anyways, they said live chat question, and we shall grab a live chat. Thank you very much once again for the support. And this live chat goes to, let's see here, Hoodoo, Texas, who says, how about showing a mineral resource map of Ukraine? And I just looked at one, and it's interesting.
And yeah, we can look at a resource map of Ukraine real quick. Resource map of Ukraine. Let's take a little look. So what do we have here? Let's see here. So, in the red is titanium. This whole area has titanium in it somewhere. The brown is uranium. So that's where all the uranium is in Ukraine. The orange is gold. They actually have gold deposits in some places around the Dnipro in Ukraine. That's very interesting. There's also some mercury deposits, a large amount of iron. But over here, in this area of eastern Ukraine, in the lighter blue, it doesn't really have anything on the legend for lighter blue, interestingly enough. I'm guessing it's rare earth elements, maybe, because I can't really find the color to match up with that exactly. But that's interesting. And I got to thank you for this. Let's take a look at another one. Let's take a look at another one. So this one doesn't even tell us what's on the map. It just has different colors. That's always wonderful. And let's see this one. This one's in Ukrainian. I can't read Ukrainian, like, unfortunately. Let's see here. So metals, mostly in the Donbass. Coal, mostly in the Donbass. Natural gas actually is along the Carpathians in the western area of the country and in the plains to the east. And then oil is also pretty much in the same locations as the natural gas. But these are only like the major gases and coals and such things. I don't think this is really measuring all of the different metals, but fairly interesting nevertheless. And I got to thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Hoodoo, for the support. He said, quote unquote, I never get too attached to one deal or one approach. I keep a lot of balls in the air because most deals fall out, no matter how promising they seem at first, from the art of the deal.
And I thank you for the support, Hoodoo, Texas. But I largely have to say that might work in business, doesn't really work in foreign policy. Because in foreign policy, you kind of have to be really kind of clear and upfront with exactly what you're looking for. And then if they don't agree to it, you just keep the war going until they eventually get beat down enough to agree to it. That's kind of how it works in the foreign policy level. That might have worked in business, maybe. But it's something that just does not work in foreign policy, because if that was what would work, then we would see that every single president of prior centuries would have done something like that, and they never have. have. Like when Woodrow Wilson entered World War I, we made it fairly clear what we were really looking for. When George Bush Sr. invaded Panama, we made it fairly clear why and what we were looking for and what we were intending on doing in our invasion of Panama. When FDR entered World War II, we made it fairly clear what our plans and goals were in the Second World War. But we didn't go in just saying everything in between. We're going to, genocide all the Germans to we're going to give up the United States to Nazi Germany. We didn't go from one extreme to the next. We went in with very clear goals and objectives, and we went at it. And we would ask them, are you willing to accept these? And then they said no, we keep the war going, and we keep beating them down even further until they eventually either accepted the deal or ceased to exist to where we just implemented the deal anyways. So I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. And also someone said it worked well for 4 years before. No, actually it didn't, because when the last time the president was around, this one was for 4 years. This wasn't what was done. Like, it actually was fairly clear, much like anyone has done for centuries past. There was fairly clear objectives. Maybe people liked them or didn't like them, but they didn't change from day to day. I'd know, because back then I was very, very political, and I paid a lot of attention to that kind of a deal, and there was very clear objectives from beginning to finish that rarely ever changed, and the ideas or plans didn't just, do a complete 180 each day and go from one extreme to the next. But anyways, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Bruce Claunch, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Bruce, for that $10 support. And don't see a comment attached, but thank you very much once again for helping to keep the channel running. And we also have a 10 once again from Hoodoo, Texas, and he puts in another quote. He said, "My style of deal making is quite simple and straightforward. I aim very high, and then I just keep pushing and pushing and pushing to get whatever I'm after. Art of the deal." I don't think it worked that way this time. I think it actually worked quite differently. He came up against an immovable object, which was Zelensky. So it sounds like it might have changed a little bit here. So, it is what it is. But Enforcer, what say you?
And also, he didn't just run into Zelensky. He heard, how do you do, monsieur? Croissant. Would you like a baguette? Something like that. And then everything changed. Everything changed greatly. But still, also I saw Hoodoo Texas say, I'm not trying to say I support it. I'm just saying what he thinks from his own book. And also, sorry, I thought you were trying to say that might work. And maybe it would, but it's just that no one's ever done it this way before. And I would largely assume, don't fix something that's broken. But still, very interesting insights. I mean, honestly, that isn't really a bad one. I mean, I can't really disagree with that one too much. I mean, you shoot for the stars and you'll land on the moon kind of a deal. That's almost just a different way of saying it. So I couldn't disagree with that one. But the first one, though, it's like, I don't really know if that would ever work in foreign policy, because no one ever does it that way. But anyways, I hope that does address that.
I'm telling you. If Macron came over and I was the president and he was like, he had croissants and baguettes and stuff and said, "Oh, you have to stay on good terms with us to get the croissants and the baguettes," I'd be like, well, I think we might stay on good terms with you. I'm like, if it means getting the croissant and the baguettes and all the bakery goods, we might stay on good trading terms with you, probably.
Man, and then he says, "Would you like the escargot?" Which are the snails. I'd be like, nope. Nope, it's over. We're done. We're cutting all relations. It's over. I'm not eating snails. I'm sorry. I just can't. I don't know. I have an aversion to eating snails and frogs. Y'all now know I'm certainly not Cajun. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Nightmare Before Christmas, for their support. They said, "Today's a good day." And a question, please, LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And today was a pretty good day, in my opinion. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Rumpelstiltskin, who said, "Did I hear correctly that a significant portion of the mineral resources are in the occupied area? And how does that play into the deal? And we'll see, I guess."
That's a good question. I actually do not know how that's going to play into the deal. Maybe it only applies to what's outside of occupied territories, or maybe we're now looking to reclaim some occupied territories, because I did hear that was floated today, that it appears that we are going to be aiming for the Russians to cede some of the occupied territories that they currently claim. So we will see, but I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, so I'd largely have to declare ignorance on that at this point. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to FR Dismay's Sayer OP, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much for the support. They said, "When will Europe be able to turn off the Russian gas, and wouldn't that end the war ASAP?"
They've largely cut it off, mostly, although there's still some being pumped in. But it wouldn't end the Russians instantly. Economic damage takes time. It's kind of like a slow bleed sort of a deal. So even if they did that, it would still take months or maybe a year or two for that really to impact the Russians significantly economically. So I hope that does address that somewhat well. Thank you once again for supporting and helping the channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Nobody, who puts in a 10 and wants more. And thank you very much for the second support of the night. And he said, to be clear, yes, Iraq, and most likely northern and southern Iraq. And again, the U.S. will be invested in Ukraine. And as long as Putin keeps trying to save face, and yes, there's very heated discussion in the White House.
And thank you for the support, and those are some interesting, some interesting points to bring up there. And I got to thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and real quick, let me grab one thing from the live chat, and there we go. So moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Jay Bagwell, a channel legend as well, and also a friend of the channel. And thank you very much, Jay, for that $10 support. He said, great job navigating us through these uncharted waters. And also check out the new Benelli M4 anti-drone shotgun. And vive la France, all the French. And also, by the way, I think Jay tagged us in a post that had that in it. So let me go check that out real quick, and let me go see if I can grab it. And yes, it's under our likes tab now, so you'll be able to see that video.
Let's take a gander at this thing. Also, thank you so much for the kind words, Jay Bagwell. It has been a minefield trying to get through this. And
also, by the way, real quick, by the way, maybe don't show the video because it might be copyrighted actually, but you can at least show the picture of it.
Let's see. It's under our likes tab. I'm not seeing it.
Well, he put a reply to it. You should see his name, and then you should see. Wait, don't show it on the screen. Don't show it.
I'm not showing it. It's not on the screen. You're looking at the screen.
Don't show it on the screen.
Okay. All right. Well, let me take a look at it. Let's see.
Visibility.
1 second, trying to mute it here. It looks pretty nice. I like Benelli's. I think they're pretty cool. And hopefully that thing will be effective and useful, but really can't show it a lot, sadly, because I think it actually might be copyrighted. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Jay Battle. Thank you for being a channel friend. And not only that, thank you for the incredibly kind words, because like I was saying a second ago, it's been a minefield to try and get through this because people are unhappy either way, because politics is polarizing these days, and the presidents are political figures. You know that as well as we do, Jay, of course. But people either hate them or love them. So and there's no in between. So they're either perfect godlike beings of angelic quality to some, or they're demons from hell to others. So, if you say, oh, it looks like that might actually be good for America or bad for America, then people just want to like dogpile because you said something bad about their blessed angel or something good about the demonic devil. That's how it works these days. But we've navigated it through somehow, and we've largely survived, which has been really shocking. And we've still largely remained non-political, just kind of calling it for what it is, which is really crazy to me too. But still, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Flash1, who puts in a $10 donation. Hey! And thank you very much, Flash, for that support once more. He said, hey, Enforcers, and I like how you have respect for the older ways and good morals to go with it. And cheers to the both of you. And live chat question, please. And I got to say, thank you, Flash, for the kind words, by the way. I got to say one big thing that I'm noticing. I saw some person say it tonight in the chat. I know they're trying to say they didn't say it, but never take politics to the point of wishing harm on people. Ever do that. Like that's a terrible thing to do. And also, it's not that serious. I mean, obviously, politics, weighs in on all of our lives on a daily basis. But to want to go harm somebody over is crazy. Like that's wild. So, it's good to have good morals to go with it. I wish other people would have the same belief with that too. At least some people, because it's crazy to see the statements being made these days. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree, and I thank you so much for appreciating kind of like our old school kind of a stance on things. I don't talk religion or politics in public. Like we're Christians. We've said that plenty of times. So that is what it is. But I'm not going to talk religion and politics in public because that's not what polite conversation is. Regardless of what people try and say, and now everyone acts like you got to shove your beliefs and your political ideology down everyone else's throat, or else you just aren't doing the thing. Like it's like no. It's like that was always a conversational rule back in the days that you do not talk politics and religion in public. It just leads to fights. And it's like that still should be the thing. Like that's the way it should be. Also, you should never get too invested in things or, wish death on political people or anyone for that matter. I mean, that's just being crazy. And I say that from personal experience. We've had death threats leveraged at us all the time by random psychos. And I can just be honest with y'all, it does nothing but make those people look crazy. And then also on top of that, I think that's not even going to succeed because it's like we're armed to the teeth. So it's like, if anyone ever tried to act out on that, it's like that's just going to be nasty all around. It's like better to avoid it. Like that's honestly how I think about it. It's like why? It's like that doesn't make any sense. Like I'll be honest. I don't care what president is the president. If a president got shot, that's a national tragedy. Like that always will be a national tragedy. And especially if they died from it, that requires a month-long period of national mourning. But if a president, current or former, died of natural causes or some sort of an unfortunate incident like that, that is a true national tragedy. Like that's something that I'll never give up on because it is. I mean, like there's no other way to look at it. I mean, maybe you like him or don't like him, but wishing death on people is a little bit of a very nasty thing. I generally don't wish death on anyone, except for people who go out of our way to declare war on us and become our enemies. That's the only people that I would say, they have to, at that point, they have to end up getting it, because we are at war and, we have a job to do, and this is a part of it. It's a bit of a nasty job, but one we have nevertheless. But beyond that, I do thank you so much for the support and enjoying our kind of, our kind of approach to things, because it's something that you just don't see anymore these days, ever. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to 10K, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, 10K, for that support. They said, are the rebel fighting in Iran close to where they plan on building their new capital? And sorry if you already addressed this, and I'm at the super chat section number 1.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support. And also, Matthew, what capital are they talking about?
Let's see here. Building the new capital in Iran.
I haven't heard of a new capital in Iran. For some reason, I actually thought you were talking about Egypt. And I was going to say, yes, they're actually building a brand new capital out in the middle of the desert. You live in the freaking desert! Nothing grows out here! They're building a whole capital out here, no joke, outside of Cairo, because they want it to be the case that it can't be overthrown. So they're putting it 12 hours out into the desert so that way no one can overthrow it. So, that's legitimately, the reason why they're kind of building it out here. But this is where the government campus is. So this is the entire centralized Egyptian government in one place, and it actually will look kind of neat. Like for example, this is the Triumphal Arch, which had a very ancient Egyptian kind of style that it's inspired by. I wish I could find a better picture of it. Yeah, here we go. So that's it right there. It's actually pretty impressive out here, but at the same time, they're in the middle of a freaking desert, and they're planting palm trees and grass like it's no tomorrow, which is just going to eat up precious freshwater resources that the Egyptians really don't have a lot of in the first place. But anyways, I hope that does address that somewhat well, and thank you once again for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Trism666, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Trism, for that support. They said, what happened to treat others as you would like to be treated? And if you have nothing nice to say, then say nothing. And did everyone just forget these to be nice to each other these days?
Oh, yeah, everyone did. I mean, everyone forgot that just like they forgot the no politics and no religion in polite discussion kind of rules. Those rules existed for a reason. It wasn't like a goofy kind of a Victorian era rule that just existed because that was the standard at the time. Those are just generally good rules to work off of. And people don't get that anymore. Honestly, people want to go out of their way to say nasty things these days most of the time. And it just creates unpolite company and unpolite societies. And people need to get back to practicing some restraint, because and also another thing that I think that's really gotten around to really propagating that kind of a deal is that the rules back in the day existed. And also there was kind of the implication that if you ever talked religion or politics and then got rude with people and said something mean, you might get your teeth knocked out. And nowadays that doesn't really happen, because, no one ever just learns a lesson, so that's also another thing that kind of propagates it, is that people these days feel like they can do that kind of stuff and get away without consequences, without anyone actually going off on them like that. And that was something back then, that people just dealt with. Like, it's like if you ran your mouth at someone, you might get a bloody nose, and then no one's going to come to your aid. They're going to go, well, what did you learn? It's like, you better not talk that kind of business around people, lest you get people pretty angry, and they might punch you, they might hit you or something. It's like, that's why you don't want to talk that kind of stuff or just be a loudmouth, because back in the day there was actual consequence, like not like dire consequences. It's not like you went to the great beyond on a disagreement, but you still would end up like getting your teeth knocked out or getting a bloody nose. And it's like, why in the world does anyone want to deal with that? I was like, just leave that kind of business to yourself, to your best friends or to your family. Talk to them about it, but it's not something for the public to know every single inner thought that you have about politics or your religious beliefs or anything. And here comes the atheists. I know it's coming. Like I gotta say this. Like every time I say something about like don't talk religion, the atheists come in and then they just start acting like they're higher and mightier than everyone else. Like they got it down. And it's like that's also something you should refrain from. It's like if you are religious or don't have a religion, that's no one's business. Like leave that to yourself. Like that's not something you have to go around telling everyone about. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And our next one here goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in an $8 super chat. And thank you very much, Margaret, for the support as well. And she said, at work, but listening. And hi, all LSA. And good day, Andrew and Matthew. And live chat question, please.
Hey, and thank you so much for support, and thank you for listening to us while at work. We are one of the biggest occupations that people have at their workplaces, and we're happy to know it. But I still thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible, and we wouldn't be able to keep you entertained while you're at work. And so with that, thank you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the live chat question here goes to Cat Sin of Wrath, who says, was it Hezbollah or Hamas that fired at a fighter jet, the United States fighter jet, a couple of days ago?
That actually would be the Yemeni Houthis, which is a different group of people down in western Yemen. I would highly encourage you to look into those because they're actually more extreme by the slogans than Hamas and Hezbollah are, which is kind of shocking. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Snowy once again, who puts in the 6 and says, will the rare earth materials also include all raw resources found in the Black Sea and in the EEZ of Ukraine?
Most likely so. Anywhere within claimed exclusive economic zones or controlled exclusive economic zones, those resources would probably be included as well. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next ones go to Nightmare Before Christmas, who puts in the 5, and also John Bernard, who puts in the 5 as well. And there are no comments to address, but thank you both, Nightmare Before Christmas and John, for that support, and we appreciate it very much. And our next one goes to 2 hot dog guys, 1 cup of snow, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for the support as well. And I said, I just got back from Kyiv, an experience I'll never forget. That's to see the courage and strength of the people every day. It was special, and everyone was so wonderful that I met, and I'll be back. And TK1F chat. LOT, LSA.
And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Very cool to hear that you went to Kyiv. I'm sure that was one hell of an experience. And hopefully someday when the war is over, we'll get to go to Kyiv. But still, thank you so much once again. Really need to hear. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one from the live chat is going to go to AF Kaplan, who said, assuming a minerals deal is signed between Ukraine and the U.S., will the agreement be subject to ratification by the Ukrainian Rada?
Most likely so, but I have a feeling, I believe that the president of Ukraine's executive authorities most likely allow them, especially in martial law, I believe, to act on the behalf of the Rada. But I'm not entirely sure on that, and we'll have to see if the Rada ratifies it. I have a feeling the Rada would ratify it if it went to them, and there really wouldn't be that much bucking of it, considering that the president of Ukraine would have signed off on it at that point. So, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to X, who puts in the 5 once more. And thank you very much for the second support of the night. And X said, is it possible to slow the chat down just a tiny bit And I will tell you, it has slowed down significantly since you sent that super chats down to 18 chats a minute versus 120. So it slowed down. So I hope it slowed down enough. But Enforcer, what say you?
Thank you for the support. Sadly, we have very limited control on the chat speed. It really just depends how many people are here. And with like about 10,100 people here at the peak, the chat gets fast because there are a load of people putting in their opinions in the chat or just saying things about what they're watching. So sadly, we really can't control it that well. But beyond that, I do think we can moderate it well, but we really can't control the speed at which the chat moves. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Timothy Gaskell, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Timothy, as well. He said, the timing of pro and anti-Ukraine statements from the U.S. makes me suspect that the changing state of mineral rights negotiations could have changed the mood of the president of the U.S.
That's possible. I have a feeling, though, that it may have been because of the leverage of Macron and his meeting with the president. And I also think that the Russians and their diehard stance on practical unconditional victory over Ukraine might be the moving factors that pretty much have forced the president's hand into the direction that he's going right now, whether he wanted it to be or not. But we'll still see by Friday. But still, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. But I would say it's a very interesting change, and I would have to believe that there are most likely external vehicles that have made this change happen more so than just personal inhibition by the president. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5 and says, my money's on Russian involvement, and the Baltic undersea cables were sabotaged by Russia using a Chinese vessel. It has a similar smell. And could it be a Chinese incitement?
It might be a Chinese incitement, but from what we know, the Yuping was in the Baltic was entirely crewed by Russians. So while it was a Chinese vessel, the crew was all Russian. So it may have been a joint collaboration between Russia and China to conduct that, or it may have been that the Russians did it on a Chinese vessel to create culpable deniability and create a more delicate diplomatic situation in that kind of event. Nevertheless, they reek of Russian-Chinese involvement. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Brian, as well, for that support once more. He said, if we donate to PETA, can they hire an army to go to Ukraine and save the donkeys, accidentally winning the war in the process?
Oh man, I wouldn't know with PETA or PETA. I'm not really sure which way you say it. I think it's PETA, like you were saying it, Matthew. But I don't know about that. I'll be honest, I don't really have a good opinion of PETA because I've generally heard, from what I've heard, this is a word on the street, is that sometimes they'll just gather up a dog that's like hanging out in the yard, and then I've heard that sometimes they almost like euthanize them on the spot once they get them. And like I generally am not a big fan of that sort of a thing. But still, I hope that does address that somewhat well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Laser314, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Laser, for that support. They said donkeys should be listed under special equipment.
Honestly, they probably will be. But we'll see if Kyiv Independent makes a new category for that, or if the Ukrainian MOD does. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I got to do it because Valley Radar asked, Peter, the horse is here.
It's here.
It's here. It's here right now. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Eric, once more. He said, how much longer do you think the Russians can continue this war with their economy and weapon stocks dwindling down?
I think that you could probably last maybe another year at the worst, and at the best case scenario, another 2. But the war is going to get very low intensity from that point forward for the Russians, and they'll probably be mostly on the defensive by that point, really just hoping that the Ukrainians collapse before they do. So I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support. And also, Matthew, how many do we have left?
Let's see. We have about 10 left.
Wow, we've actually made good time, actually. I'm really shocked by that. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Burnaby Alex, who puts in a 5. He said, I think the Russian donkey pool chief was, of course, the donkey's not free. What are you, some kind of communist?
Listen, we abandoned communism long ago. Pay up. But we have to have supplies. Pay up. Bled. But beyond that, thank you for the support. And I gotta say, I guess they're not communist anymore, Bled. But still, thank you once again. I hope that does address that quite well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Born in Ukraine, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Born in Ukraine, as well. They said, is it true that Russia is selling gold reserves to prevent collapse? And also, would you consider a ringtone sell of the LSA medleys in the Apple Store? And thank you.
That's an interesting idea. Maybe we could. I'm not entirely sure on that. I don't know how the licensing rights would work on that. But beyond that,
I wasn't aware that you could change your, like, put a custom ringtone on your iPhone. I thought that was, like, not something that Apple did on iPhones.
maybe it's a jailbroken iPhone. But beyond
Broke
that,
from jail?
I'm going to jail. But beyond that, I still think if it's support double the show and keep it running, maybe we will. I'll look into it a little bit and see if we can. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in the 5 and says, it genuinely breaks my heart to see him so excited to receive F-16s and forced to accept everyone's table scraps and win an upside-down war. Truly GOAT.
I'd honestly say I don't think it's sad that he's getting F-16s. I mean, I'll be honest, that's the best he'll ever get because we're not giving him F-22s or F-35s. And like, I can promise you that they're not getting those. And they're probably not getting Rafalas or Eurofighters either, because those would end up being national security concerns if we gave them to Ukraine. So honestly, it's not bad for him to get F-16s, especially F-16 AMs that have been upgraded to pretty much be a C model F-16. They're actually pretty good. But, you know, beyond that, it is a pretty tough war for him to fight. But I wouldn't be that sad for him to get F-16s. Honestly, that's incredibly good. It could be worse. He could get an F-16A. Luckily, he's getting an F-16AM, which is actually pretty good, pretty well off, really. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that has addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Alex Burleton, who puts in a 5 and says, great job on that music, and take one from the chat.
Why'd you stop playing that beautiful music? But still, thank you so much for the kind words. I really love the music that I've been working on. It's great stuff. I got to give a huge shout out once again to Budapest Scoring, the orchestra, and Marcos Barilari, the composer, for really helping me out with that and making it come to life. It was an amazing job, and we still have a little bit to go on it, just a little bit more, but it will be done probably here in the next 2 days. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we will get a live chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the live chat question goes to, let's see here. It goes to O-Tubes, who says, since the U.S. appear to be siding with Russia, does that mean Iran and other dictators may turn against Russia? And do you think the U.S. will be welcomed by all?
No, I don't really think the U.S. would be welcomed by all. We largely would abandon our sphere and then get turned away by them because they're really looking to put the United States down and ensure that we're never a threat to their hegemony if they try and create it. So I would say probably not. But I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ryan H., who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Ryan, as well. He said, good evening, Enforcers, and I'll be visiting the nation's capital next week. And what would you recommend I check out while I'm there in LSA?
Oh, there's so much. Washington, D.C. is such an interesting and cool place. Number one, you have to go to the Smithsonian's. You have to go to all of them. Honestly, though, one of them that was a letdown was the Hirshhorn Museum. I just wasn't that big of a fan. Like, contemporary art stuff just isn't like my thing. Like, I don't really get it. So I like, honestly, that one was kind of like a passable one. The rest of them though are really cool. So I'd really recommend that you go and check them out, especially the National Museum of well, actually the American History Museum. This one has just some cool stuff in it, like the Batmobile. Let's see here, the original props for well, the suits and props from Star Wars. Railroad locomotives, damn it, they got them, they're here. Like, and also they have a Tucker 49. This has special like relevance to me because my granddad, before he died, actually told me all about the Tucker 49, and he actually gave me a model of it as well. So these are pretty cool to me. None of them really exist. I think there was like 9 of them that actually existed. They're incredibly rare, very expensive, and they're really cool. But let's see here, what else? Also, this was the first car to travel all the way across the United States in one go. I think it was like a 40-day trip or something, like 35 days, I think. Really, really cool car. It's the original one as well. But there's so much cool stuff in the American History Museum in the Smithsonian. But there's also some really cool stuff in the National Museum of Natural History. Really cool. Like, the Smithsonian's are really worth their time. people call them tourist traps, but they're free, and you know, they're not really tourist traps. They're actually well worth what their snuff. They're up to snuff, is what I'm trying to say. The Union Station's really cool to go see. It's just a really cool building. If you can get a tour of the U.S. Capitol, that's a really cool one to do as well. Highly recommend that you go check out the Library of Congress. There's also the Botanical Garden, which is just outside the Capitol. That's really neat. I didn't get to see that when I was there. Let's see. What else would be cool? The Lincoln Memorial, of course. The Washington Monument, honestly, is skippable. Like there's tiny little windows that you can look out of, and you know, it's not that impressive. Like the Washington Monument is cooler to look at from a distance than be inside of it. Let's see here. What else? Georgetown. Go to Georgetown if you can. Not Georgetown University, but just Georgetown. Really cool itself. Let's see. What else would be interesting for you? Oh, geez. Let's see. Let me think. Just kind of, oh yeah, the
go to Nando's in Foggy Bottoms.
Yeah. And then the Bureau of Printing and Engraving is a pretty neat thing to go see. And then I think, let's see, there was a couple of other things. They're kind of outside of DC. There's the Everett Hazy Center. Let's see here. I think it's somewhere around this airport. Maybe I'm thinking wrong. Yeah. Here we go. The Stephen F. Udvar Hazy Center. This is kind of like an extension to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. And it has a whole bunch of cool stuff that they couldn't fit in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. at the National Mall. Highly recommend that you go here. Really neat. And let's see here. I think you can actually make it out here by Amtrak or MARC, M-A-R-C. I forgot what that stands for. It's like Metropolitan something Rail Commission, something like that. But beyond that, there's a lot of cool stuff to see in Washington, D.C. Also, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff to see across the river in Arlington, Virginia, like the Arlington National Cemetery. Not really cool, but it is something to go and look at and see. The Pentagon is... Don't get a tour of the Pentagon, just look at it passing by. They're not going to show you anything deep or secret in the Pentagon, so it's not really worth it. But also, there's a couple of malls down here that are really, really cool. Would recommend to go and check those out. And then also, there's downtown Arlington itself up here, which is also a neat place in its own right. So I hope that gives you a couple of ideas of things to see. Kind of the tourist trappy things, but the tourist traps in Washington, D.C. are well-deserved. Oh, by the way, the Washington National Cathedral is also really cool to go check out as well. It's really like the only full-size cathedral we have here in the United States. This one, technically, is actually bigger than the Notre Dame in terms of internal volume and size in every single dimension. So by seeing this, you're seeing a cathedral bigger and grander than one of the most famous cathedrals in the world, the Notre Dame. So go check this one out. But I hope that does address that well. I hope that gives some ideas, and I wish you the best of luck on your trip to Washington, D.C., a really cool city. But still, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Amrid, who puts in a $5 donation, and thank you very much, for that support. They said, "My fear is that after addressing Congress, they will try to pull a fast one on Zelensky, coupled with being in the U.S. for the big deal, he may cave."
No, I don't think he would be the kind of cave like that, because, you know, it's just as easy as getting back on the plane and flying back home. Maybe, but I don't think, I think the chances might be a little bit low of that. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Plazant, who puts in a 4, and also Marc-Andre Burnett, who puts in a 2. And thank you very much, Mark, and also Plazant, for the support and for also helping to keep us going. And we also have a $2 support from LSA Sergeant Figment, who said, "Hit the like button, that's in order."
And hit the like button, that's in order. And thank you so much for being here tonight, LSA Sergeant Figment. And thank you so much for enjoying this channel and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Not For One, Yet For All Ukraine, who puts in a 2 and says, "Let's go, boy."
Let's go, baby! And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Chaos Reigns All, who puts in a 2 and says, "Retired U.S. Air Force for the win."
Hey, and retired Air Force for the win. Really, retired Armed Services for the win. Can I get an amen? Amen. And so with that, thank you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Snowy, who puts in a 2 and says, "Prague. And what's your opinion of Groningen, Netherlands?"
Did they say they were from Prague?
They said Prague at the beginning, but they didn't say they were from there, I don't think.
So Prague, really cool. Want to go there one day. But beyond that, Groningen in the where was it? The Netherlands or Norway? I think I misheard it.
Netherlands.
Groningen,
Yeah.
we found it. Like, we found it. You said it.
I was trying to hold back a yawn while you're doing that.
Man, dude, I'm sorry, man. I'm trying, man. I'm trying to cut this down because I also want to get off at a reasonable time tonight too. But this is actually really, this is actually really pretty. Actually, this is neat. Look at that. It's like Lego houses.
That is pretty neat. I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Look, it's a inflatable cat with scuba gear or snorkeling gear, really. Duck. Let's see. Flowers. The obelisk. And this guy playing a broken flute. Okay.
Pied Piper.
Also, I think this guy's midsection is broken because he's like walking that way, but his whole body's turned around and looking. He needs to go see medical help. But still, this place is pretty neat. One day I would like to go to the Netherlands and see it myself. I really would like to go all across Europe and see the places because it would be incredibly neat to see each different place and culture. But I really want to go to the Czech Republic. Really, I'm not going to lie. I hate to say it. I'm heavily influenced by Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at this point, and it's made me believe that the Czech Republic would be a really cool place to go and see. So now I really want to see the Czech Republic like a lot. So hopefully one day we'll get around to doing that. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel keep on running. I hope that this addressed in incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And with that, that is actually our last super chat. So once again, a huge shout out to everybody once again for helping to support the channel and helping to keep us running. And we do sincerely appreciate it a bunch. And we are now going to get to our live chat questions. And of course, our Morse code decoders of the stream first. It was Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsap, Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Joni Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said, good morning. Morse code, the code for the day says, the reversal done today is of unbelievable proportions. Let's see Ukraine to victory in LLT LSA.
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all for getting it correct for the 1098th day of the war, because y'all continue to get that correct time and time again. And so a huge shout out to all of y'all once again. A big shout out, a great shout out. And with that, it's time for us to move on into the live chats. But due to us being overtime, we will get 3 live chats and then round out tonight's stream. So we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Flash1, who says, an old flip-flop in action is crazy. But my question is, have Taiwan and Israel any unique metals that the U.S. wants?
Taiwan and Israel, I do not believe, have any kind of rare metals. Israel really has, like, nothing. Their main businesses are arms exports and cut diamonds. So really nothing going on in Israel in terms of rare metals. I'm not really sure about Taiwan, though, but I have a feeling that the chances of that are limited because from satellite picture, there is not really a lot of proof of large mining operations going on in Taiwan. So generally would have to believe probably not. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one goes to VMBH, who said, Matt, about the Iran thing, my hunch says it's a localized Sunni or Balochistan event, possibly aided or encouraged by Taliban out of Afghanistan. And what's your thought? Honestly, VMBH, like, there are actually groups within Iran that really, really do not like the current government there, that are just normal people that have banded together. That is possible. And also it's possible what you're saying as well. It could be that particular sect that could be rising up. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not really sure. And I'm not sure how large this actually is either, because right now it appears to be localized to one city inside of Iran, at least according to what we know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that's probably a decent likelihood, possibly, because I really don't know a lot about this group or why they started to conduct their armed rebellion today. So that's a decent possibility, really like any other. And so I hope that does address that somewhat well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person through in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one is going to go to Stephen Urkel, who said, with the mineral deal, is the U.S. going to allow the replacement parts to Ukraine for the F-16s and the Abrams? And will the Dutch be able to send the F-16s without a U.S. veto?
The answer to all of that is yes. From what we understand on the current mineral deal arrangement, U.S. support to Ukraine militarily will continue. It won't just allow them to keep using, well, obviously they would still be able to use the American weapons they have already. No one can really take those back. But it will allow for them to continue to get more arms support for the United States, more munitions and spare parts and everything else included. The Netherlands deal, we believe, was never really going to be blocked in the first place, even if it didn't go through. So the answer to all that is yes, from what we're understanding right now. Although, of course, that could be subject to change. What you were seeing is not the final results, and anything that you were seeing here in this preview is subject to change. If that is what's set in stone on Friday, that is what's set in stone. But at this point, we have no damn clue if this is going to be how it remains or if it's going to change in between now and Friday. Hopefully it does not. But I hope that does address that the best I can. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream. And I got to thank every single one of y'all massively for watching this stream tonight. We are honored and greatly privileged to be able to be in the position to share the news with all of y'all and to keep this channel running. I hope that y'all enjoyed tonight, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine and the news from around the world, because it is not what you think. But with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army will never die.
And with that, and also huge shout out to Trism666, by the way, just threw in a $25 donation and said, thank you for another great day and keep up the good work and good night in LSA. And that, thank you very much, Trism, for that support once more. And I think that was like the second or third support of the night. So we do appreciate it. But with that, folks, we are now ending the stream. And thank you all once again for watching the stream tonight. We had a whopping 62,000 people join us tonight and 3,500 likes, which is tremendous as well. And thank you all for smashing that like button also. Be sure to join us again at 10 p.m. Eastern again tomorrow for the next night of War News streams. And you might be seeing a short war video tomorrow as well, because we're trying to get back to those and trying to get back into the full swing of it, just like we put out today. So with that, folks, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and we'll see you all tomorrow, and good night.